Check 1, 2. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. It's nice to see you live. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is another episode of How to Rock Astrology. A real pleasure to be hanging out with you guys today. Today in particular, we're going to be discussing the sign of Uttara Ashadha in Vedic astrology. Unfortunately, I don't have my picture up, but that's the story of my life. So, Uttara Ashadha. Maybe I'll just give a little glimpse here at our sutra that we're going to be working with today. This is the Taittiriya Brahmana Sutra, which has been given in ancient times long ago. And this is what we're going to be using to define and to work through the character quality of this nakshatra. It's a continuing part of my nakshatra series. So, welcome. It's nice to see you. If you're hanging out live, feel free to ask any questions. I'm just going to get my chat going up here. And as usual, as I like to say, if anybody's interested, if you're liking the work I'm doing here, and if you want to contribute more, if you want to see more of what I've got going on, you can find me at dustincormier.com/subscribe. And it's here that you'll be able to join my email list, where you'll be able to receive the work that I have coming in the future. I'm currently writing some books. I'll be writing a book on astrology. I'm writing a novel, and I've also got more videos coming out. I might be doing courses soon. So if you want to check that out, feel free to go to there. And as well, you can also download my new free ebook called Thread. And that's at dustincormier.com/subscribe. It's a psychedelic novel. It's a short story, actually. So that's my first work of literature. I'm very proud of it. So check it out if you feel like it. Now, let's jump in today, folks. We've got a lot to go through today. This is our video series where we use the Taittiriya Brahmana, particularly from several sources, including Vic Dicara in his wonderful book, Nakshatra, The Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology. It's the main text where we're getting our readings from. Now, there is another important text here. I guess I don't have the front of it, but this is Ernst Wilhelm's wonderful little PDF. It's the energies of the 27 energies of the lunar mansions. You can get that just by looking it up on Google. Between these two, as well as this third book, The Divine Forces of the Lunar Nakshatras as Portrayed in the Vedas, by an author named Radhe. It's a very well-researched lady who's in the sidereal tradition, but whose work really reflects a lot of deep work on the Vedic lore that surrounds the deities of the nakshatras. So, it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. I'm happy to be here. I plan to finish this series one day, 1 month at a time, whatever it takes. So, thanks for joining me here. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, let's do a little background on what exactly we are doing here. And as usual, this is live, folks, so if you feel like it, you can feel free to ask any questions or join us in the chat, and I will be able to answer questions as we go along as best I can. Now I'm just going to get this up on my phone so I can see any questions that are thrown at me. So, give me a break. Here we go. So, welcome everybody. Let me just get this out of here. There we go. Thanks for your patience there. Now, as you all probably know, I am a tropical Vedic astrologer. This is worth mentioning. As a tropical Vedic astrologer, I am somebody who does not use the sidereal positions of the planets. I don't bring the signs back 23 degrees. I use Western measurements for where the planets are. But sidereal astrology is still used when configuring the positions of the lunar nakshatras. Uttara Ashadha, which we're looking at today, is a nakshatra. So, as we can see in this slide, I use 12 tropical signs, or rashis, the 12 tropical zodiac signs, overlaid on the 27 star-based sidereal nakshatras. We can see here this is kind of a merging of Western zodiac signs with the traditional Indian 27 lunar mansions, which are star-based. So if you're interested in more of the difference between sidereal and tropical, check out my Age of Aquarius Debunked video. And I also have several videos where I describe the difference between sidereal and tropical. So feel free to check those out. Now, this is a classic little story that is more than what is conveyed here astronomically. But essentially, there was once a time when there was a Rakshasa, an ego demon, who was growing too big for the universe. And so they called on Vishnu, and Vishnu said, all right, I'll deal with them. And Vishnu came to this demon in a tiny little dwarf star. And he said, I have a request from you, Mr. Master Demon. I would like to take 3 steps of land. Since this is Vishnu, who is the smallest and also all-encompassing, but he's this small, tiny little atom. So the ego demon said, I can give you anything. Do you want 3 little steps that's going to be so small you can take your 3 steps? Vishnu says, great. First I'm going to take the heavens, then I'm going to take the local galaxy, and then where will I put my 3rd foot? And when the demon, once he realizes it's Vishnu, says, oh, well, you can step on my head because I can see you're the Lord of the universe. Metaphorically, at some level, we could say that the first step is deep space, which is the stars. The second step is local space, which is the galaxy, the tropical zodiac. Then the third space is the geomantic space, the self, and that's the houses, the horizon, the earth itself. So there are 3 layers to astrology that we tend to use. Again, this story is more all-encompassing than this, but it gives us a little glimmer at our 3 cosmic wavelengths that we deal with in tropical Vedic astrology. So in this series, my intention is to convey the pure essence or nature of the nakshatras as they are without the sign associations. Now this is a key bit. It's worth mentioning here that if you've been following my series, you probably heard this already. Because in the tropical Vedic understanding of astrology, which has its deep roots, at the time that astrology was configured in India around 2,000 years ago, the sidereal and tropical zodiacs were together. So it wasn't really one or the other. Although, by my reckoning, it was always tropical. Sidereal just took a picture, and then the tropical zodiac diverged, but the sidereal stayed the same. From our perspective, tropical was the real thing, and sidereal just tried to take a picture of something that you weren't supposed to freeze. Again, there's lots to say there. Now, in the sidereal tradition, they have this idea that the signs are somehow married to the nakshatras. For example, the example it's easy to give, Ashwini begins in the old tradition at 0 degrees of Aries. So they used to think that somehow the beginning of Aries and Ashwini had some correlations together. Say Ashwini begins everything. It's the initiator. Now, in our system, Ashwini would be far ahead of 0 degrees Aries. It's going to be in the midst of Aries. So So there's no connection. And that's what we say in the tropical Vedic narrative, is that there's no inherent connection between the nakshatras and the signs. Another example I could give is Jyesta. Jyesta, in the old tradition, 2,000 years ago, Jyesta was in the sign of Scorpio. So they used to say Jyesta is this big, mean, bad, scary asterism because the moon is debilitated in Scorpio, which means the moon is debilitated in Jyesta. 2,000 years later, in today's time, the sign of Jyesta is now in Sagittarius. So the big bad connotations of Jyesta are not so bad. Jyesta is still a heavy sign for many reasons. But it's not because it has any connotations with Scorpio. The signs of the zodiac have nothing to do with the arcs of the nakshatras. And this is what we know as tropical astrologers, because the tropical signs every 24,000 years go all around the zodiac. In another 2,000 years, Jyesta is probably going to be in Capricorn. And then it's going to take on a whole, it's going to have the energy of Capricorn there, which means that there's no concise archetypal marriage or bond or connection between the nakshatras and the zodiac. They're two totally different things. And this is what we mean, this is what I mean when I say that we want to convey the nature of the nakshatras without the sign associations, because there's been this confusion of the old tradition thinking that there's an association of the signs with the nakshatras. So, that being the case, how then are we supposed to define the nakshatras if we can't use the connection to the signs? Well, how we do it is we base our ideas of the nakshatras on literature that existed before the tropical zodiac came about. Because the truth is, the tropical zodiac is actually much more new, much more recent than the nakshatras. The zodiac came out about 500 BC. Around 0 AD is when it really started to come together. But the nakshatras existed 4,000 years ago. Around, they say that this literature we're getting it from is about 2000 BC, something like that. And that's just when it was encoded. It might have been actually spoken, because remember, in the Indian tradition, in all old traditions, they would orally pass it down through speaking, and then eventually, years later, when the word press came along, they would write it down. So the words of this sutra are much older than the zodiac. So they don't have the distortion. And this is what I mean by this distortion. Now, the distortion comes from the fact that a lot of people, again, think that, just to reiterate, a lot of people think Jyesta is really evil because it's been distorted to think that Jyesta relates to Scorpio, when the moon is debilitated. That's a distortion. So this is literature that doesn't have the distortion of the tropical signs involved in it. Now, the most authentic and undistorted literature we have available on the nakshatras comes from the Taittiriya Brahmana. It's a commentary on the Krishna Yajurveda. It's considered to be a continuation of it. It's considered to be Vedic era literature, depending on how you define that, because Vedic era probably technically goes even further back than this. So we see this nature of this distortion is twofold. Number one, there's the incorrect zodiac associations, which we've just described. The sidereal tropical debate has caused much distortion to the nakshatras specifically. Now there's also an association with the Vimshottari Lord. It's the planet that rules the first dasha period when the moon falls in that nakshatra. Just to give a quick word to this, again, Vimshottari, which is the Mahadashas, those weren't discovered and understood until years after the nakshatras came about. Remember, the nakshatras are like 2000 BC. The first literature of the nakshatras, all the deities of the Vedic lore were compiled into 27 gods in the Taittiriya Brahmana in 2000 BC. 1,500 years later, around 500 BC, people started thinking about the horoscope. They had this great intuitive leap and said, at the time where we are born, if you know the exact time, you can see the horizon, and that creates the zodiac and the signs. And all of this stuff of the horoscope, the tropical zodiac horoscope, happened around 500 BC to 0 AD. That it really started to get codified, that people got onto this idea. And so at that time, they had something called the Mahadashas come about. The Mahadashas is Vimshotri. It's the internal clock. You know, if I'm in this dasha, if I'm in Saturn's dasha, it means everything related to Saturn in my chart is going to be louder. So when the moon is in a certain nakshatra, you begin life at a certain dasha. This is classic Vedic stuff. This idea of beginning life at this dasha is something that is, again, happened way after the nakshatras. So people say, again, if you're born in Ashwini, that you're going to be in the Ketu dasha at the beginning of your life. If you're born in Kritika, you're going to be in the Sun dasha at the beginning of your life. You're born in Jesta, you're going to be in the Mercury dasha at the beginning of your life. And Vic Dicara has cautioned us in making a connection between the nakshatra and their Vimshotri lord. Vic Dicara wants to talk about the nakshatras purely based on sutras and literature. He doesn't want to say that Ashwini has some connection to past lives, because the moon, when the natal moon is in Ashwini, you begin life in the Ketu Mahadasha. Vic Dicara doesn't suggest, and he winks at us and saying, Kritika has nothing to do with the sun. Just because you begin the sun dasha when the moon is in Kritika, when you're born, doesn't mean Kritika has anything to do with the sun. Jesta has nothing to do with Mercury, intrinsically, at its most intrinsic archetype. So this is another area of distortion, is this so-called Vimshotri lord. And whether or not the nakshatra lord, some people call it, whether or not it's true or relevant, it could be. And there might be some truth to that. A lot of people talk a lot about how, for example, with Uttara Ashadha, I don't even know what the lord would be for Uttara Ashadha. So Uttara Ashadha has the sun. If the moon is in Uttara Ashadha, then you begin your life in the sun Mahadasha. And because you're so sensitive at that time, the sun becomes you absorb a lot of energy through the sun Mahadasha at the beginning of your life. This is where this knowledge, this is where this idea comes from. And there might be some truth to it. But the essence of the nakshatras is deeper, because the nakshatras were codified 1,500 years earlier than Vimshotri. And this is what we're getting at here. We're getting at an essence that goes even deeper than that. So let's start getting into it. Without further ado, it's good practice for me to move through this logic. Here we have Vic Dicara's Ayanamsha, which is pretty much the Lahiri Ayanamsha with the tropical zodiac applied to it. So Vic Dicara's zodiac has Vic Dicara's nakshatras are each 13 degrees and 20 minutes long. Ernst Wilhelm's is a little bit different, and they sway quite a bit between the two of them. It has to do with how Ernst's nakshatras are calculated with Dhruva equatorial longitude. It's kind of hard to explain. I got to work it out with these two guys about the difference between these two. I've been saying that I have to for a long time. It's just, life gets crazy. But they do it differently. Ernst's has to do with the fact that you are considering that Dhruva, the North Star, and the Earth's relationship to the North Pole is a key factor in configuring how to perceive, because from Earth's perspective, our position on Earth is going to slightly geometrically distort the band of the nakshatras. So whichever of these two you decide to roll with, unfortunately they are very different, and so it can be confusing depending on the position of the nakshatra. For example, Uttara Ashadha in Vic's system goes from 20 degrees, around 20 degrees of Capricorn till about 4 degrees of Aquarius. That's Uttara Ashadha for Vic. Now for Ernst, Uttara Ashadha begins at 15 degrees of Capricorn. And then it ends at 27 degrees of Capricorn. It's very frustrating because it's hard for us to know which one is the real case here. In Ernst's system, my Saturn is in Shravana. In Vic Dicara's system, my Saturn is in Uttara Ashadha at 1 degree of Aquarius. So my Saturn is in two different signs in both systems. So I have to just bite my tongue, read about both, and see which makes most sense to me. It's a difficult thing. If you've got a planet in a cusp or an important space, an important thing in a cusp, I would advise you not to even play too much with that nakshatra. If your moon is in between any of these, even though the moon is very important, the nakshatra is very important, you really got to do your diligence, feel out the difference between Uttara Ashadha and the other sign, and see if you can feel out what the differences are, because every nakshatra is pretty different. It's frustrating, but this is what we have to do as modern astrologers, retranslating the positions of the nakshatras in a tropical framework to fit today's time. Now, there are 4 classical nakshatra characteristics, and these are not given in the Taittiriya Brahmana. They may have been called by cultural intuitions in commentaries based on the 2 distortion points we've already mentioned. I like to bring them up at the beginning to just show, number 1, that everything given here is classical stuff. Remember, the Indian tradition's been talking about nakshatras for a long time, for 2,000 years. Well, technically longer than that. 4,000 years, really. But ever since the tropical zodiac came about, the Indian tradition has been making connections to the embodied nature of the nakshatras. And so they've created these classical nakshatra characteristics. Now, these 4 characteristics, it's hard to say. I'm just realizing I've got to move my thing here. So this is again the positions of the nakshatras, in case you missed them. I think my screen was in the way there. We can see again in Ernst's system, Uttara Ashadha is between 15 degrees of Capricorn and 27 degrees of Capricorn. Just to reiterate that. So it's in today's time, there's been years of mulling over the nature of the nakshatras, and it's given us these qualities. Now, Vic Dicara does mention these qualities in his book. So where these qualities come from, some of them could come from Vedic era literature. It's hard to say. But so far, what we do know is that it's easy to find these characteristics, and so I've decided to share them here. There's the activity. There's the 7 qualities of nakshatras. There's the sexual yoni animal, which is used in lunar compatibility and traditional Indian marriage assessment. And there's the kingdom, animal, plant, and mineral. And Ernst Wilhelm puts a specific emphasis on the kingdom. That's the Dhatu, I think. Yeah, Dhatu, Mula, and Jeeva of the kingdom. And we're going to describe a little bit of it specifically because Ernst puts an emphasis on it. So these are the 4 nakshatras considered to be fixed/permanent, dhruva. Of the 7 qualities, all of these different qualities mean something different. Dhruva is fixed, chara is moving, tikshna, I believe, is bright. There's mixed, there's ugra, which is like tough. So all of these have different meanings. Dhruva particularly means that there's a fixity to it. There is a solidness to all the nakshatras that are under the category of dhruva. It's interesting, of course, that dhruva is also the name of the North Star. The North Star the North Star technically does change, but the North Pole of Earth is always technically fixed on this one spot. That's why they call it dhruva. It's unmoving. So Uttara Ashadha, like these other 3, have a way of being stubbornly fixed to the goals that they seek to apply themselves to. Their deva is Vishvasham Devanam, the perceivers of all. And it's the deities of all. Ashadha relates to victory. Of course, Uttara is it comes after Purva Ashadha, the latter part of victory. The activity of all of these is balanced, of all these dhruva signs. So that's the activity is either active, passive, or balanced. Active means it's like pushy. Passive means it's like it lets things go. Uttara Ashadha is someone who can be assertive and pushy, but who can also let things go. They're finding a balance in the middle. Their yoni animal is the male mongoose, which says something about how they experience their yoni energy. And of course, the lunar nakshatras are based on the moon's position, which means there's a yin feminine dimension of the soul. Of course, the masculine qualities of the soul is what we do, how we act. But the feminine quality of the soul is how we receive. So the mongoose, especially for the native moon, the natal moon in this sign, the qualities of the mongoose express a lot about how this person's unconscious psyche operates and the type of erotic energy that they experience. Take that with however you feel like taking it. Eventually, I'm going to talk more about the nakshatra signs as erotic marriage signs. So we'll get more into that as time goes on. Now, let me just, before we go on here, I just want to see what my thing looks like. I feel like this is a little brighter than it needs to be. Yeah, whatever. That's okay. Okay. Now, this last article is an important one for us. Uttara Ashadha and Uttara Phalguni are the Dhruva nakshatras, which are considered to be in the animal kingdom, the Jeeva kingdom. Now, let me just take a moment to describe the importance of this signification. Ernst Wilhelm spends a little bit of time discussing God, I wish I had the front of this. God bless my mom. My room was a little bit crazy, so my mom decided to clean it, as she does, and I love her for it. But I lost the front page of this. But for anybody interested, I should show it anyway. Let's go google.ca. All right, so what you want to do, if you want to find this important article that's free online, that has been written by Ernst Wilhelm, I would just look up Ernst Wilhelm 27 Energies. Let's see if it comes up. So this is Jyotish ebooks. It used to be free. Whoa. Even more stuff. But I got a feeling that you'd have to buy these core yogas. Right, so this is not where you actually buy it. Oh, maybe you can't buy it anymore. Mystery of the Zodiac by Ernst Wilhelm. Nope, that's a different one. Well, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. But this PDF is available, I would say, on Ernst Wilhelm's website. Here you go. Sorry, folks. Okay, so you're going to go to Ernst Wilhelm 27 Energies. And what you'll find is VedicAstrology.net. Vedic Astrology with Ernst Wilhelm. You click on it, and you'll find Ernst Wilhelm's website. And it's from here that you can go to. Please download my free ebook, Energies of the 27 Nakshatras. It's a new translation of the Nakshatra Sutras from the Taittiriya Brahmana, which is, of course, our source text that we are working with. So you want to go there if you want to get this text that we're getting this from. It's a very important text, and in it, Ernst Wilhelm describes the quality of all of the nakshatras. Particularly, he emphasizes the importance of this kingdom, whether it's mineral, plant, or animal. And now this kingdom is relevant, and Ernst Wilhelm gives us a clue in his other writings, especially he's got a great thing called the New Rashi Sutras, where he describes the signs in a way that's very important for everybody to hear. And in that, he gives us a clue as to the nature of the Dhatu, Mula, and Jeeva classification. We get a glimpse into it as it relates to the nakshatras by seeing how it relates to the signs. And it's the same way. In the nakshatras, you see there's 27 of them. 27 is divisible by 3. So in the order of the nakshatras, it flows 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So beginning with Kritika, I believe Kritika is probably, well, I guess I don't want to say which one it is because I think it might be Jeeva. Not sure. But Kritika is going to be one, it's going to go Dhatu, Mula, Jeeva. Dhatu, Mula, Jeeva as you go along the nakshatras in chronological order. It's the same thing with the zodiac signs. So the cardinal signs of the zodiac are considered to be Dhatu. The fixed signs are considered to be Mula, and the mutable signs are considered to be Jeeva. Cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, they are Dhatu. And this relates to, Dhatu means mineral. So these Dhatu signs are, especially with the nakshatras, the Dhatu signs relates to mineral. They might literally be somebody, the example I always give is like someone who's like a mechanic. A Dhatu person, so let's say the moon is falling in a Dhatu sign. Let's say the moon is falling into Rohini, which is a mineral sign. Then this might be a person who literally, as a mechanic, they are someone whose main focus is getting minerals, getting materials. They might have a big junkyard full of thousands of different parts for thousands of different cars. And they might hoard material, and they might have customers, and they know that their customers drives this car, and that they, somewhere down the line, are going to look for this specific thing. A customer came along and they asked for a Honda Civic. And one day I'm going through someone else's junkyard, because this is Dhatu people, they're always checking out the material, physical things. They're going through their buddy's junkyard. It's like, hey, you've got this old Honda Civic transmission. I know my guy just bought a Honda Civic, and down the road in a couple years, they're going to need this thing. So do you mind if I get it off you and I'll trade something else? That's like a Dhatu-minded person. Mula, which is the plants. Dhatu is mineral, Mula is plant, Jeeva is human or animal. And we could see this is a metaphor for a certain wavelength of thinking. The mula plants are the fixed signs in the zodiac, in the tropical zodiac. So that's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. These signs are considered mula, and they get fixed on things. So they kind of go between the mineral and the animal. Mula is in the middle, the plant signs. And it's the plant signs that can be important communicators. They get really fixated on a business, or, they're really all about using all the resources that they can to develop on their business, but they also keep an eye on the material as well. They're not so focused on being networkers. It's the Jeeva. The Jeeva people are the people who are like the mutable signs. It's Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. The Jeeva signs of the nakshatras, like Uttara Ashadha. The Jeeva is the most human, the most resourceful, they use their intelligence, they use statistics, and they are people who might have several enterprises going on at one time. They really like to branch out into different things. They aren't going to focus all of their energy into a business or into a specific turf. Like the Dhatu signs know their locale. They know all the people in town. Jeeva people are online. They are business people. They're business savvy. They know about different races, cultures, and they are good speakers. They're diplomatic people. They understand how humans work. They understand trends, and they're always changing, being adaptable and absorbing the global collective shifts in psyche and in consciousness and in trends. So this is what Uttara Ashadha applies themselves to. Uttara Ashadha is this fixed type of personality, because we know it's a Dhruva sign. And again, of all of these, the animal kingdom is the most significant. This, as a Uttara Ashadha, is a Jeeva type of sign, a Jeeva type of personality. And what that really goes to show is this quality of understanding how all humans are universally. There's a universality to their comprehension of how humans work. They're very adaptable. They're very diplomatic. They can be ambassadors for different signs. And they often, you'll find that there's a melting pot awareness. There's a chameleon energy where they can understand how to maneuver and navigate individual units in a greater field, and also the mass of people. This relates to Uttara Ashadha as this leader. Uttara Ashadha, as we're going to learn, has the characteristics of being a sort of leader, having a leadership quality. And the Dhruva nature also relates to, we can see this combining, where Uttara Ashadha becomes somebody who is interested in developing some kind of enterprise, some kind of thing with 4 feet on the ground, an organization, a group, a band, a business, a family. But they will be connected to always some deeper network of an intelligence, a principle that they can tap into. Something as simple as like the Me Too movement, the Black Power movement, some of the movements that have come through in recent times. It's Uttara Ashadha people would be leaders who can develop a business, for example, that supports this larger movement happening as it happens. And they stay really fixed and firm as an ambassador of that movement. And they know how to use people, not necessarily in a bad way. Sometimes leaders have to know, it's like the general in an army needs to know all of their different soldiers and how to use them best. You're not going to send Johnny, who's a good defender, into into the enemy territory, to stake out new spots. You leave Johnny in the back so he can keep defending. Put Alan, who's better at that kind of thing, in that espionage area. So it's, when we say using people, what we mean is understanding how each individual supports the nature of the collective, which is this melting thing for the Jeeva people. So that's a good picture of Uttara Ashadha, is this fixed Dhruva character, but who melts to the changing global trends and applies themselves to that. It's a good beginning to our picture of Uttara Ashadha here. So, we're doing okay. Let's keep moving forward here. I'm going to have to go to the bathroom at some point. Not quite just yet. First, let's move forward. I'm just going to clean up my act here. Let's now talk a little bit about what's going to be the main next focus of our discussion today. Here we are describing the sutra structure in the Taittiriya Brahmana. This is how, so the Taittiriya Brahmana is a collection of sutras. And a sutra, you have to understand, a sutra, they call it doctor's sutram. It's the doctor's twine that they use if you got a giant gash in your arm. The sutra is going to tie it back together. So you've got this gaping wound in your arm, and the sutram is going to bring it together. So on the surface, you have a single line. But if you take those sutrams out, you'll see that there's a wide chasm of duality, of all these different ideas. But the sutram ties it all together. We only see the doctor's stitching on the surface. But underneath that, there's a wealth of diverse data. This is why sutras tend to be what we call enigmatic. We say that you can see the sutra is like the tip of an iceberg. But when you really contemplate and meditate on the sutra, you'll realize energetically there's a vibrating intuitive background essence within and beyond what we see on the surface. That's the whole iceberg. You only see the iceberg on the surface, but there's a much deeper iceberg underneath. That's why these tend to be enigmatic, and different people read them in different ways. We're going to learn as we go on that Ernst Wilhelm keeps it enigmatic. When you read Ernst Wilhelm's translations, they almost don't make sense in English. And he's being true to each individual word. Vic Dicara tightens them up a little bit and says, this is what this sutra is saying. That's why I like to go through both. But ultimately, the nature of the original sutra that comes from the Taittiriya Brahmana is meant to be this enigmatic riddle. And you almost want to digest the pieces of the riddle. Now, how these riddles work is not only the words themselves have meaning, but their place in the sutra has meaning. This is like in music, we have verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, usually, right? So you'll have the verse, and then it's like, the chorus is coming, and it has a certain tone to it, has a certain vibration to it. So in the same way, all of these pieces of the sutra have their individual place. And Vic Dicara has cleverly color-coded them so we can kind of understand them. Now, this is not the sutra. This is the sutra for Pushya. The very top is the true nakshatra name that we're all familiar with. And sometimes, of course, this is important because the name given for the nakshatra is sometimes different, and this is just used to give us more information about the sutra. So the pink letters, A, the first word is the deity which rules the nakshatra in classical Vedic literature. So this is the god of this nakshatra. This is the pink word. In this case, of course, it's going to be Vishvasham Devanam, which is the 33 devas. The name of the nakshatra is in white. So this is the name of this asterism in the sky, this small slice of the 27 slices of the sky. This star asterism, the stars associated with it, is going to be referred to in the white word that comes second. And sometimes obscure names give more information, such as in this case for Pushya. We have Tishya here, but Pushya is the name of the nakshatra. Now, next we have the yellow word, and this is what we call the foundation from above. And this is what is needed for this nakshatra to function properly. So in this case, of course, it's Abhijayat, which we're going to find is things to conquer. So Uttara Ashadha needs things to conquer in order to produce the blue word. So the foundation from above is what is needed for the nakshatra to function properly. And then Padastad indicates para. Para always means like parachute. It means above. So Padastad indicates that this previous word is what is needed for the nakshatra to function properly. And then the blue word is the foundation developed below. This is what the nakshatra desires to produce from what it receives. Avastat indicates that this word is produced through its nature, the nature of the nakshatra. So what we really are seeing here is that the deity associated with this nakshatra needs the yellow thing to produce the blue thing. That's the best way to describe it. So Vishvasham Devanam, which rules Uttara Ashadha, needs Abhijayat to produce Abhyatam. And we're going to talk about what all of these things mean. Now, before we do, I think that I'd like to do a quick little bathroom break. So let's take a moment here. We're at the top of the hour. I'm going to do a quick little bathroom break. I won't be long, and then I'll come back. And then we are going to start to get into the official Taittiriya Brahmana Sutra for the nakshatra of Uttara Ashadha. So I'll see you guys in just 1 second. Thanks for hanging out with me here, and I won't be long. Bonjour. Hello, everybody. Ah, much better. Thank you for your patience. I've been drinking these awesome smoothies lately, and usually they go through me pretty quick. I digress. It's nice to see you here, folks. Let's continue forward with our discussion of Uttara Ashadha and the Nakshatra Sutras and the Nakshatra Sutra associated with Uttara Ashadha. So we are now going to get into, we just discussed the sutra structure that is given in the Taittiriya Brahmana. Again, just a review, the deity of this nakshatra needs the yellow word to produce the blue word. And that is what we're about to dig into with Uttara Ashadha. Now, we're going to get it from two different perspectives. As we can see here, we've got the Visvadevas. That is the gods. It's really the 33 gods of the Nakshatra Sutras combined into one. In fact, it's worth noting, in this summary of the Nakshatra Devatas given in the book that we're going to be reading from, this is the divine forces of the Lunar Nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas by the Vedic researcher and author Radhe. She gives a categorical description of each of the Nakshatra Devatas. Now, all of these devatas are all kind of conveyed here. There's Prajapati and Brahaspati are their own thing. There's the Adityas, there's the Rudras, and there's the Vasus. The Adityas are kind of like Sattva. They relate to heaven. The Rudras are Rajasic. They relate to atmosphere. And then the Vasus are Tamasic. They relate to the Tattvas, the 5 elements on earth. Then there's the Pitris, which stand alone. So Uttara Ashadha is one of the standalone nakshatras. And its categorical definition is that it's actually all 3 of the 33 divine forces that make up the energies of the nakshatras, all combined into one place. This is like all of them at once. So the Visvadevas is considered a force of its own. It's like, when you are, we say in Tantra, there's me, there's you, and there's the relationship. The Visvadevas is like that, but there's 33 gods, and they all have their own individual story. But the story of all of them together is Visvadeva. So the Visvadeva, Vishvasham Devanam, relates to all of the nakshatras as one entity. So this is the Visvadeva's nakshatra. And it, of course, often relates to the symbol of an elephant's tusks. In particular, it usually represents one tough tusk. It's like the elephant's right hand that they use to do everything. Now, again, we're going to hear this from 2 different sources. One will be Ernst Wilhelm, and the other is going to be Vic Dicara. Before we do, let's take a moment and perform the Nakshatra Sutra vocally. Now, I've been getting better at my Sanskrit. Technically, the best thing for you to do is to go through this video, hear the guts of what these words mean. Now, I'm even going to say this, for me, I've done some precarious work in developing on my intuitive grasp of the nakshatras that are important to me. In particular, what I have done a lot of work with, whenever there's a north node eclipse or a south node eclipse, anything important related to Rahu or Ketu, which are very important symbols in Vedic astrology, what I will do is I will consider the Nakshatra Sutra that my Rahu and Ketu are in. So if you have Uttara Ashadha as the space where Rahu or Ketu sits, and there's anything related to an eclipse going on, it is good for you to intone the mantra of Uttara Ashadha. As well, if anything related to this nakshatra is moving through your life, really the best way to feel the depth of the iceberg of every nakshatra is to contemplate it. This is how the ancient rishis who configured these mantras, they have a vibratory resonance, which we humans have discovered. They say the Vedas are perfect. We just blew the dust off a book that was already vibratorily written in the ether. Take that with however many grains of salt you wish. This is how the idea rolls. So let's go through the sutra, and I'm going to teach it to you here. If you're interested, Vic Dicara has a better version of all of the nakshatra mantras and of these sutras on his YouTube channel, where he has actually studied the Sanskrit, he studied the Devanagari, and he knows how to intone everything quite properly. I recommend you go to his YouTube channel. It's going to be, the 27 nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology. You look up your nakshatra, you look up Uttara Ashadha, and then look up Vic Dicara. And you're going to find he has a video where he goes through the sutra. He did it with his classes. My voice is in there, I'm proud to say. So look for that if you want to hear his going through it. But for now, I'm pretty confident. I've gotten better at this over time. Let's see, Abhijitam. I just want to make sure I got this right. Yeah, so that's Abhijitam. So let's go through the Nakshatra Sutra. Now, there's a few keys here. First of all, whenever you see an S with a little inflection on it, it's going to have a sh, almost like sh, but sh. When you do sh, your lips are kind of puckered like this. Shh, it's almost like you're smiling. Try smiling, and then shh. This sh is going to come from a different place. Vishvesham. So we have Vishvesham, Devanam. Whenever you see a vowel with a note over a line over top of it, you almost want to imagine that there's two A's there. What probably happened is that in the original, this was Deva and then Anam. So Deva Anam becomes Devanam. And it's the same thing with this A, right? This is probably Na and then So Devanam Uttara. It can be a little bit tricky, but this is how you would do it. Uttara. And then the little H with a little dot on the bottom is going to signify a H. Abhijayat is easy. Parastad, right? It's not parastad, it's parastad. But, that's the idea. But even I'll mess it up. And then there's Abhijitam. Now, it's nice when you have an H after a consonant to hear the H, like Abhijayat. Abhijitam. To have that H after, if you can help it. So all together we have Vishvesham, Devanam, Uttaraha. That one's a tough one for me. Uttara. Vishvesham, Devanam, Uttaraha, Abhijayat Parastad, Abhijitam Avastad. So that's me just working through it. Now Vic Dicara does have this musicality to it. When he goes to the Parastad, he goes lower. And then he goes to the Avastad, he goes higher. So let's do it now. Thanks for your patience. Oh, excuse me, big stretch. Now let's work through it. I hope I am given the blessing by Ganesha to do this Sanskrit sutra justice. If you want to follow along with me now, let's together do the Nakshatra Sutra for Uttara Ashadha. Start with Om. Om Vishvesham Devanam Uttara Abhijiyat Parastad Abhijitam Avastat Om Vishvesham Devanam Uttara Abhijiyat Parastad Abhijitam Avastat. One more for good measure. Om Vishvesham Devanam Uttara Abhijiyat Parastad Abhijitam Avastat. Felt like I got it pretty good at the end there. So for those who are listening and watching and who are interested, let me just fix this. I'm going to put this up here. For those who are hanging out with us here and going through that, if you are ever working through your nakshatra, the best thing to do to really get to the essence of it is to do what we just did and work through the nakshatra as it is given in the Nakshatra Sutras, as it is spoken, because the vibratory essence is the best way to get to the heart, the authentic heart of these roots of Vedic astrology, to really roll the meaning of the words on your tongue as you go through them. So what you want to do is do it a few times first, just so that it's like practicing a scale on guitar or piano. You go do 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 and you do it over and over and over again until it's like blah. You can do it in your sleep. You can do it with your eyes closed. You can do it while you're dreaming. And then when you're playing music, you can go then you can add a musicality to it. Then you can play with it. Then you can feel the music of it. In the same way with the Nakshatra Sutras, you go through it a few times until you get the phonetic memory in your mouth. Then you can start to add the meaning to the vibrations that are coming out of your mouth. Once you're combining those two, you'll find that the inner vibratory essence of knowledge taps into your inherent propensity for receiving that transmission, which we all have. I dare you to try it. So I'm glad that we got through that. Now let's start to unfold the meaning. Sorry for my phone making noise here. Let's start to unfold the meaning of this Nakshatra Sutra. Again, this is Uttara Ashadha. Now, this is Ernst Wilhelm's translation. And again, as I like to say, I hope my phone isn't going to start making a bunch of noise now. Ernst Wilhelm treats these Nakshatra Sutras with, he keeps it enigmatic. He goes straight to the literal translation of each individual word. He doesn't think about trying to make it sense with the next word after it. He just has these Lego blocks that we're going to put together. Then it should seem a bit enigmatic. Sometimes it seems to make sense enough as it is, but it should seem almost like it doesn't make sense. Then we're going to go to Vic Dicara, who has done a little bit of polishing work and digested these sutras, putting them all together in a way so it's less of a code and more of a self-standing phrase. But let's begin with Ernst Wilhelm to start practicing the essence of the meaning of the words without a English context. So what Ernst Wilhelm tells us is Vishvesham Devanam Uttara Abhijayat Prastad Abhijitam Avastat. What we hear is that the Uttara Ashadha, the conclusive victories of Visvadeva deities. That's an overall picture of what this phrase means. Uttara Ashadha, which is the name of this nakshatra, it means the conclusive victories, the ending victories of the Visvadeva deities. So Ernst gives us this little translation. Vishvasham is plural, which means all lords. Devanam is plural. It means of the divines. So Vishvesham Devanam means all lords and of the divines. So let's continue on here. Uttaraha is conclusive, so it's like after the later Ashadha, the later victories. Now, of course, in the sutra, it just says after. We don't see Uttara Ashadha. This goes to show that, the person who would be listening to the sutra knows that we just did Purva Ashadha. And they want to keep their sutras tight. So they just, instead of saying the whole name, they just say Uttara. It's concluding the later. Now, these are the next two words are the important ones for understanding the essence of this sutra. First, we have Abhijayat, which means superiorly conquering. And that's Padastat, from above. So we have superiorly conquering from above. And then Abhijitam, which is complete victory. And then Avastat means from below. So to put it all together, the concluding victories of Vishvashani Devanani, of all divine lords, the concluding victories of the Devas, of all the psychedelic cosmic energy of the victorious truth of spiritual knowledge and literature, of the Devas, of truth. The concluding victories of the truth that moves through the living divine entities of the nakshatras is superiorly conquering from above and complete victory from below. So we can already start to read into the essence of this sutra, is that the Uttara Ashadha person is someone who wants to be superior, who wants to be above, who wants to be a leader, who is regarded as a leader, and who has a capacity to be superior and to conquer through planning, through strategy, through the strength of their numbers, through the strength of their spirit, through the strength of their passion, through whatever it means. There is a superiority and it is the superiority that allows this person to have complete victory. And they want to have a complete victory. They want to finish what they started. They want to follow through and be regarded as someone who conquered and followed through with whatever they were leading, in the name of some force that is larger than them. It's a key aspect of this. Vishvasham Devanam, being all the deities, really goes to show that Uttara Ashadha, as a native, is working in the interests of the divine forces when they are at their best. They're a channel for something larger than themselves. And this gives us a clue as to how this nakshatra can run into trouble if they start to believe that their personal self-interest is the originating source and center of the power that they use. It's interesting that we have these words abhijayat and abhijitam. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that abhijit is around this part of the zodiac. I almost want to make sure that I'm not bullshitting myself on that one. Where is abhijit? Abhijit, astrological nakshatra. Nakshatra. Within the constellation Capricorn. So, yeah, it's technically, I think, it occupies the last part of the Uttara Ashadha Nakshatra. Okay, so that would be the sidereal position. So, yeah, what we were reading here, and it's just as I thought. Abhijit, if you know what Abhijit is, it comes just after Uttara Ashadha, which is very interesting. It's very interesting to think about the fact that Abhijit comes at the end of Uttara Ashadha, and that the phrase Abhija is burned into the Taittiriya Brahmana Sutra for Uttara Ashadha, because then Abhijit would come right after it. You know, there's a Abhijit is like Ochiophus or whatever it is, the 13th zodiac sign. Of course, we laugh at the idea of Ophiuchus or you know, whatever it is, being the 13th zodiac sign, because it just ain't it. It's not what's described. It's never been described. Ophiuchus, I think it's called. The idea of a 13th zodiac sign has never been conveyed in any literature, in any tradition. So far as I know, gosh, I should better take my foot out of my mouth here. It is regarded as a constellation that is a constellation. There are many constellations. You know, it's one of the northern sky constellations, I would say, that is not supposed to be one of the zodiacal constellations on the ecliptic. In the same way, Abhijit is a 28th nakshatra. And a lot of people, there are traditions that actually use 28 nakshatras, because 28 is a different divisible energy. It relates to sevens. 7, 14, 21, 28. So if you break the nakshatras into 28 nakshatras, there's a whole different mathematical geometry that emerges, and it's built on squares made of sevens. Ernst Wilhelm has mentioned it. I can't think of what the name of that would be called, but it's a very nuanced dimension of the nakshatra world that is not often, nearly as often used as the 27 nakshatras. Defining the nakshatras as being 27 is the more common way, especially when it comes to horoscopology and when it comes to the position of the moon in the backdrop of the 27 slices of the sky, as well as all the planets. So in this case, we can see that Abhijit, as that 28th nakshatra, is being sort of sucked into Uttara Ashadha through the significance of Uttara Ashadha as this concluding victor who has this Abhijit, which means this victorious. You know, when you read the translation of, let's see, what is it? Abhija. And it's sort of superiorly conquering. Abhijayat is superiorly conquering. And then Abhijitam is complete victory. It's the result of that superior conquering. Both of them relate to this conquering energy. Now, let's dig into Vic Dicara's definitions of the words that we've read here and that we've gone through. These definitions come from Vic Dicara's Nakshatra Sutras course on his website. I highly recommend it. You can find it at vicdicara.com. Now, each of these, this is a bit of an older definition. He uses the newer definitions in his book that we're going to read through. So keep in mind, what we're doing here is exercising our understanding of the Sanskrit roots of these. But in the end, the best way to define this Nakshatra Sutra is what we're going to read from Vic Dicara in the end. The perceivers of everything must engage in conquest to achieve supremacy. Makes sense, right? That's the best way to define it. But let's do a bit of exercise here. So what we see is Vishva, and then Isha, and then the at the end, which has something to do with the plurality here. This is just Sanskrit grammar. When you put Vishva and Isha, Isha really relates to Ishvara, so it's like a master. Then Vishva is the all-pervading, right? If you've ever heard of Aiva or Ishvara, that's the Isa, the master here. So Vishva Isha becomes Vishvesham, the all-pervading masters of, again, the cosmic force of truth that lives through the nakshatras. And then Dev simply means divinities. So Deva, Devanam is all different ways of working Sanskrit grammar. Because Sanskrit grammar is funny like that. There's a musicality to it that you just have to put it in this certain way in order to flow with the vibratory energy of a sutra. It's a musical thing. And then, of course, Uttara means above, or it's sort of, it's interesting that Vic Dicara describes this as above. He also describes it variously as the later portion, Uttara. It's the third word in our sutra. Uttara, really generally we should say that the best way to define it is conclusive, latter. It's referring to the fact that this is the later Ashadha, the later victory. Now, Abhijayat, Abhijay means from mastery. It's commanding, it's ordering, it's leadership. And this is why this commandership is such a relevant theme to Uttara Ashadha natives. Being in a place where you can be regarded as the commanding officer who can organize and delineate orders. That's that superiority. And it comes from being a master of something, from being respected and regarded as being the person who knows how to operate this leadership, this pioneering activity, this group activity. So Abhijay means from mastery, and Abhijit is going to mean supremacy. So overall, what Vic Dicara gives us is a little gumball, condensed understanding of this nakshatra, is that it's good for achieving excellence and using it to guide and direct others. It's leaders and teachers, especially people who are initiating some kind of pioneering directive and guiding and directing others to come to this unified form, this unified will. The negative thing about this nakshatra is that this person can be uncomfortable with peers, because peers are all on the same plane. But this person works most comfortably when they are not on the same plane, when they are above, when they are superior. And that superiority that they instinctively gravitate towards makes them feel uncomfortable, like they're a dick, or that people think that they're big-headed. All this kind of stuff can come from Uttara Ashadha. So in Vic's Nakshatra Sutras course, this is how he conveys it all together. It's the latter portion of the Ashadhas has the all-pervading divine masters who need mastery to achieve superiority. And that mastery is a key theme. But Vic Dicara later whittled down the meaning of this sutra, and here we read it from Nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology. This is Vic's final word on how he would define the meaning of this sutra. It says, the perceivers of everything must engage in conquest to achieve supremacy. It's the cosmic forces of the Devas, of Devanam, must engage in conquest to achieve supremacy, which means that they, somewhere along the way, they must channel themselves through the open channel of a willing participant who is willing to play leader and guide for all humans through nakshatras, specifically like Uttara Ashadha. We learn that Uttara Ashadha is like Jesta and like Vishaka as being amongst the most ambitious big project nakshatras that are out there. And so the energy of Deva, of Guru, of spirit, of wisdom, of eternal wisdom of the Vedas, moves through Uttara Ashadha, and it is dealing with being a human, conveying these divine forces, is where the Uttara Ashadha person has to run into the trouble of being, it's kind of like a don't shoot the messenger thing. It's very easy for this person to get caught up in megalomanias and being accused of doing things that are against the human will at large. But remember that, this Uttara Ashadha, when it goes well, it can really be an evolutionary agent who is inseminating ancient wisdom which exists in the vibratory eternal knowledge that pervades the universe. It's like Sanskrit and all these devas. The seers saw them and translated them. Again, I always say it's like there's a word, I think it's called muktub in Arab. It means it's already written. It's like a book that's already written. We're just blowing the dust off of it. And Uttara Ashadha can be a channel for the Devanam, for this energy. But they're still humans, and they have to work out how to make it make sense for them to be a human, conveying this energy, being an evolutionary agent for society. And many times, evolutionary agents in society and in history will always be seen as doing something taboo, as something bad, something that makes us all uncomfortable. But it's like dad energy, If if an ancient tribe 3,000, 5,000 years ago, everyone's sitting around and eating berries and the resources are dwindling. They're all kind of nervous that their resources are dwindling. Dad comes along and says, okay, everybody, that's enough. That's enough being afraid. We got to go catch a buffalo. Come on, get your stuff. Come on, kids, get your spears. Nope, no more sitting around. Come on, you're coming with me. Grabs him by the scuff and throws him. Come on, we got to go catch a buffalo. We're going to starve, and you need to help me, and I need to eat, and you need to eat. So you're coming with me. It's like this sort of like, oh no, I'm not ready for this, but we got to do what we got to do here, folks. So it's to the kids, it's like, oh my God, Dad's being such a dick for making me do these things I don't want to do. But it is an evolutionary force for the greater survival of the species that Dad is yanking you out there. So this is why evolutionary agents in society can be perceived as taboo. doing this annoying stuff that nobody wants to deal with, Dad. But it's necessary. And this is part of the drama of being an evolutionary agent, of being a transistor of divine energy, and still having the ego of a human, and having to be equal amongst your peers when you are done channeling the divine energy. So let's start moving through. I hope that was cool. I like thinking about these kinds of things. Maybe I do have Saturn in Uttara Ashadha. I feel connected to it. This evolutionary agency, trying not to be, learning how to be a regular human. There are times when I feel like I've got to convey myself as a very important person. I've got Saturn there. It's pretty okay placed. But there are reasons why I can run into these issues of being a dick, of trying to think I've got this important thing to say, and sometimes part of the ego trip of Uttara Ashadha is that you will find times and ways and means. If you meditate, you follow your inner impulses, the universe is shaped to your soul, and it will open the doors for you to take advantage of your Uttara Ashadha talents and skills. You've got to pray for it. You've got to move into it. And you have to have faith that it will come. And you don't have to feel like you have to compensate, like I have to make this thing happen, and try to be something special. Because as I've been saying lately, you have nothing to prove to anybody. This energy is already radiating through you. If you try to compensate to make it happen, a lot of the times it makes you end up looking like you've got small man syndrome. Like, I've got to do something special. If I'm not doing something special, I'm doing something wrong. And then people are like, okay, calm down there, hot boots, relax. You're good. But again, this is the give and take. Because sometimes when everyone says, hey, Uttara Ashadha, relax, Uttara Ashadha has to, but wait, my divine transmission hasn't come through yet, so I'm not done. So be quiet while I convey my thing. This back and forth between the human ego and the divine transmission is part of the narrative of Uttara Ashadha. So I hope that was useful. Let's start digging in more to our Nakshatra Sutra. We are now going to be reading from Vic Dicara's, and this is Vic Dicara here. You've probably seen him on YouTube. This is Vic Dicara's Nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology, where Vic is going to give us the real good news, the real guts of how to understand this Nakshatra Sutra that's been handed down from the Taittiriya Brahmana. I should have brought some chocolate down with me today. Maybe I'll go get some on the next round of bathroom. So let's begin reading Uttara Ashadha, Supreme Victory. And of course, again, just to give us another little reminder, what we read is Uttara Ashadha's Nakshatra Sutra. Vishvesham Devanam Uttaraha Abhijayat Parastad Abhijitam Avastat. And that translates to, the perceivers of everything need to engage in conquest to achieve supremacy. Now, Vic Dicara goes through each of these words in concessive order. Vishvasham, he basically says, the word Vishva means everything. In possessive form, of everything, it becomes Vishvasham. So the possessive form of everything. So Vishvasham is it sort of belongs to the Devanam. Let me just make sure I can digest the grammar here. Vishvasham is in possessive form. Yeah, so this phrase, Vishvesham Devanam, refers to gods of the universe. I'm just going to keep rolling here, just so I got to digest what Vic means by this possessive form, and it will as we go along. So let's look at the word Devana. Devana. Devana is plural for Deva, a word usually used for gods. Now, as it was discussed briefly in the sutra for Ashadha Nakshatra, the word Deva is based on the root word di, which means brilliant light. We see it in Diti, which is the producer of the Adityas. Now, since light enables perception, words about light are used for things that have a noteworthy and superior powers of perception, such as the gods. The devas, the devana, are these superior powers of perception. And of course, Vishva, again, means everything. Vishvana means of everything. So this phrase, Vishvesham Devanam, refers to gods of the universe. But it also explains what these gods really are. They're the conscious entities who perceive the world, the perceivers of everything. It's like that old Zen phrase, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? These are the living entity of the subjective realm of consciousness that perceives the universe. The perceivers of everything. The ones who make the cosmos alive. It's the living soul in a lot of ways. Now, of course, Vic gives us the word Uttara. And Uttara specifically means higher, later, more mature. And it does relate to a superiority. There is a signification of superiority in this word Uttara. So we can almost say that the Vishvesham Devanam, this is the god who relates to this idea of superiority. So the superiority of the universe comes through Vishvesham Devanam. That's what we're kind of reading here. Through the gods. Which makes sense. Now, next we have our word Abhijayat. The word means conquering. It is based on the root ja, which means to produce or obtain. And it's often used in the sense of succeeding and accomplishing, getting something. So thus Jaya is usually translated as victory or success. That's why we hear the word Jai, right? Shri Ram, Jai Ramo. Shri Ram, Jai Ramo. That Jai is victory. Victory to Ram is what that mantra means. So that's where Jai is coming from. Now the prefix Abhi in front of Jai makes the meaning more forceful and intense. So there's a Abhijay, and that relates to a conquest. So that's why this word Abhijayat refers to a conquering. It's like Abhi is like the necessary thing that leads to Jai, which is victory. So Abhijayat is like a forced conquering, a forced victory through a strong, willful action. Now, the next thing we have is the word Abhijita. And it's a little bit different. This is a past perfect tense of the same word, abhijaya. So thus, it indicates the successful accomplishment of conquest. One who succeeds in conquest is victorious and superior, making something subject to the will of the conquestor. Now, Vic, again, gives us a fun little clue here. We cannot overlook the fact that Abhijit is the name of the 28th nakshatra, which happens to lie within the fourth quarter, the fourth pada of Uttara Ashadha. By using this word in the Nakshatra Sutra, the author of the sutras hints that he does not consider Abhijit as a separate nakshatra, but simply thinks of it as a segment of special power within the already powerful Uttara Ashadha Nakshatra. So especially the last pada of Uttara Ashadha might be signified to have some significance, some power. So, in summary, now this is a total summary of the whole nakshatra. Those who perceive the universe, Visvadevas, from a vantage point of superiority, Uttara, tend to want to conquer and control it, Abhijaya, so that they can become its master, Abhijita. This summarizes Vedanta philosophy on how individual conscious beings, Atma, interact with the world as creators. They have a not entirely accurate, subjective vantage point of being superior to the world, Uttara, and therefore they try to control it, Abhijaya, and master it, Abhijita, for their own purposes. This is more of that ego narrative of being a human trying to convey the divine will. Indeed, there are some gods who are described as Visvadeva, but the true divinity denoted by this name is all of the individuated conscious beings occupying the universe. And that's Vishvasham Devanam. It's all sentient beings that occupy the universe. It's the force of sentient life itself, which is an interesting thought to convey. Very good. Now we are about to next embark on our interpretations, but I gotta go pee again. Let's take another moment, and then we're going to next come into the most important part of this sutra for those who have planets here and who are interested in interpreting their planets in Uttara Ashadha, including I'm going to take up some time to go into the indications of Rahu and Ketu in this nakshatra. So that's why I want to go to the bathroom first. It could take a little hot minute of time. So let's take a moment to do that, and then I'm going to come right back, and then we're going to jump in. So let's see you guys in just a moment. Wonderful. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Nice to be hanging out with you folks. Nice to see some people hanging out with us live as well. So, let us now embark on our journey to convey an interpretation of planets and nodes falling into Uttara Ashadha Nakshatra. This will be our interpretive section of this video. So, what Vic Dicara tells us is Uttara Ashadha is welcome wherever there is a subject to master, an opponent to conquer and subjugate, or a goal to attain. Wherever a leader is needed, Uttara Ashadha shines. So, obviously, confident planets like Sun and Mars help Uttara Ashadha signify leadership and the power to dominate and to overcome. It's especially interesting that for most cases, Mars in the sign of Capricorn is still going to carry the energy of its exaltation, although the true exaltation is at a specific degree that's earlier in Capricorn. But the Sun will be in the sign of its enemy here in Capricorn in today's tropical terms, but I should leave that behind till after, because right now we're discussing the pure nature of the nakshatra, which is, again, it's not married to the signs. So by the strict nature of Uttara Ashadha Nakshatra, the Sun and Mars work well here because they help this nakshatra signify leadership and the power to dominate and overcome. Now Saturn also helps Uttara Ashadha endure long, arduous battles without giving up. Like that elephant that just won't quit and keeps on pushing no matter what. Saturn, yeah, it's worth saying here. I guess I can mix them in. So Saturn, by the strict archetype of Uttara Ashadha, does well. It's especially nice that Saturn is going to do well in its own sign of Capricorn or in the early part of Aquarius, where Uttara Ashadha is right now in the Zodiac. Although, again, it's debatable whether Saturn at the first degrees of Aquarius, like mine is, it's right on the cusp of Ashadha, Uttara Ashadha right now. In about 1,000 years, Uttara Ashadha will be mostly in Aquarius anyway. But I digress. Now, Jupiter in Uttara Ashadha. Jupiter gives Uttara Ashadha the strength of wisdom and learning. And the strength of wisdom and learning allows the strategic intelligence of the pioneering winner of Uttara Ashadha to apply its intelligence to the goal that it has in front of it. Especially relevant if Jupiter is your Lagnesha, if it rules your ascendant, or if it's your Amakarika. Because the planet, the sign that the Amakarika is in, is going to have an energy about it in your soul. Now, we also read, and this is going to be useful for us, this is going to be useful for us as we get into interpreting the nodes. Rahu magnifies Uttara Ashadha's power and ambitiousness. Now, Uttara Ashadha can be troublesome. Where can it be negative? Uttara Ashadha can be troublesome where competition is uncalled for. Although it can comprehend the need to be submissive and inferior at times, it's not accustomed to being anyone's peer. Thus, it is not the best team player. Uttara Ashadha placements can sort of convey especially when there's important things going on here. If the Sun, Mars, or Jupiter are the Lagna Lord, the rising sign Lord, then you've got a lot of this leadership energy going into Uttara Ashadha that's going to make it possibly difficult for you to be a team player. If your Atmakarika falls here, you know, it'll be okay because Sun, Mars, Jupiter, their bread is buttered on the side of that masculine conquest energy. So now planets like Venus and Mercury, on the other hand, can highlight this weakness of Uttara Ashadha. Venus and Mercury are supposed to be this sort of communicative, team-playing, friendly, non-competitive building of a skill for its own sake, building on love for its own sake. You know, Venus in Uttara Ashadha can be someone who really leads with a masculine energy. It's probably better for men than it is for women. But there tends to be a sort of, you know, I'm not going to drop this. I'm not going to compromise in relationships, which is not good for the business of Venus. Although planets like Venus and Mercury highlight the lack of team playership as a weakness of Uttara Ashadha, but Venus and Mercury also indicate significant superiority in the things they symbolize, individually as well as house lords. Now, the moon can also bring out this weakness. The moon in Uttara Ashadha, you know, the moon is kind of supposed to really be similar to Venus. It's how we listen within, and it's how we gain what we need on the planet that supports the sun. So if the moon is falling into Uttara Ashadha, it's going to be hard to compromise. It's going to be hard to, you know, the emotional things that you desire, you're not going to let them go when you're communicating. That's not exactly conducive to what the soul fusion represented by the moon is supposed to signify. So the moon can bring out this not being a team player weakness. But the moon here does signify strong and compelling ambitions and desires. It's more of this narrative of the overall narrative of the Uttara Ashadha native really is plugged into the consciousness and the soul of the moon in Uttara Ashadha. What we read is that Ketu seems to be the most difficult planet here when Ketu falls into Uttara Ashadha, tending to indicate a fear of and withdrawal from challenges and leadership opportunities. They're a place when your Ketu does well, and how it happens is that you sort of let go of the egoic dimensions of your Ketu placement. There are plenty of times where certain nakshatras are conducive to letting things slide and to letting, you know, Ketu's energy remove you from the intense participation in the house and the nakshatra implied by Ketu. In this spot, Ketu unconsciously wants to be superior. Because sometimes with Ketu, you got to get over your ego and just be what Ketu is. Ketu here, there's a nature of that is as a conqueror, as someone who needs to stand on top of everybody else to be superior, because that's what side your soul's bread is buttered on. At some level, with Ketu here, you have to be okay with being that, but you also have to, okay, but it's so intrinsic to who you are that that's probably a tough thing. I hope I didn't just lose my, I can see I just restarted my stream. I hope I'm not now off on my sound. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm going to have to restart my stream here. That hasn't happened for a while. So we're going to quickly restart the stream here, folks. To fix my screen, as you can see, I'm melting. And then I'm going to come right back and we're going to continue with our interpretations of the nodes in this nakshatra. So I'll see you guys in just one moment. Please feel free to hang out. Hello, hello. Testing, testing. Looks like we should be okay now. It's the nature of my technology that I am dealing with in my reality. Sometimes the computer gets a little squanchy, but it looks like we're okay. So Ketu is a bit tougher in Uttara Ashadha. I'm going to go into greater detail in a moment. Maybe I should start with Ketu here. We're already talking about it, so let's do it. It's better. Ketu is the originating source, the past life energy anyway. So I like to start with Ketu. Oh, big stretch. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching, we are now about to describe Rahu and Ketu placed in the nakshatra of Uttara Ashadha. Thank you for watching. My name is Dustin Cormier. If you let me know if you're enjoying this, let me know in the comments, and if you really dig my work, feel free to go to dustincormier.com/subscribe, where you can receive emails, you can get a free copy of my eternally free ebook. It's a little short story, psychedelic short story. And as well, you can check out my work that's coming. I'm going to be producing books, and I'm going to have out there eventually an astrology book where I convey my own idea of tropical Vedic astrology. If you want to see when that's happening or just to get in touch with everything I'm doing, it's dustincormier.com/subscribe, where you can subscribe to my website email list. So let's dig into our interpretation of Rahu and Ketu falling into Uttara Ashadha. If you're watching this, I've made a video where I convey the whole narrative of Uttara Ashadha as a nakshatra, as its information comes from the Nakshatra Sutras of the Taittiriya Brahmana. So this is where my information is coming from. And most of this data, I'm flowing with what we've read from Vic Dicara's Nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology, as we can see here. And Vic Dicara has conveyed the nature of this nakshatra as relating to being a conqueror and producing superiority as well. We could even say a superior master of something, leaning on their mastery, their skill, their reputation, and their forceful leadership in order to guide a group, a group think tank, an organization, or even a whole global movement towards specific goals, attainments, and objectives. This is really the nature of Uttara Ashadha. It's a Jeeva nakshatra, so it's good at being sensitive to global trends and using its sensitivity to global trends to apply intelligent strategic force towards the expansion of a movement that it's a part of. And the Uttara Ashadha person, especially when the moon and ascendant is there, tends to be a leader in this regard. If the Amakarak is there, if the Lagna Lord is there. Now, when the nodes are there, it's going to have a specific energy to it as well. The nodes are a very important part of our evolutionary narrative. Rahu and Ketu both signify the felt pieces of the soul that have been somewhat fragmented. And in our lives, we operate unconsciously through Ketu up till about age 36. And at age 36, we begin to integrate. We begin to really go into Rahu. Age 36 is when Saturn matures. The Navamsha chart begins to really come into its full bloom. And once Saturn matures, we have a stability that allows us to carve into the unknown jungle grasses of the North Node. So if your North Node is in Uttara Ashadha, at age 36 is when this is going to really come to the fore. If your Ketu is in Uttara Ashadha, then you've been this sort of person who's been wanting to conquer, whose bread you feel is buttered on the side of being a conqueror, a leader, a pioneer. And now you need to get out of Ketu and start integrating Rahu in the nakshatra that Rahu is falling into. In this case, it would, of course, be either Punarvasu or Pushya. So you need to use the Rahu in Punarvasu or Pushya, wherever it's falling for you, to integrate Ketu. So let's focus for the moment on Ketu in Uttara Ashadha. Now, Ketu in Uttara Ashadha is particularly one signification that Vic Dicara gave as having some particular difficulty when it falls in the nakshatra of Uttara Ashadha. Rahu does better here. Rahu magnifies Uttara Ashadha's power and ambitiousness. Now with Ketu, the tricky thing with Ketu is that Ketu has this funny divine confrontation with the human ego. The thing is that the human ego has one foot in Ketu's nakshatra. The other foot, in some ways, is in the etheric, absolute connection of consciousness beyond time, where our souls are already existing in nirvana and have been liberated into moksha, where we all sit in samadhi at the end of time. Because samadhi is both the source and exit of creation, of the soul. The soul sits in samadhi, and in order to love itself, it bounces out of samadhi in order to come back in. You know, this is me being poetic. God is excited to look away from its lover's face because of the sweetness of looking back at its lover's face. This is the meaning of the soul coming out of samadhi and into samadhi, and out of samadhi and into samadhi. So Ketu has come out of samadhi, and it's moving back to God. That's what we're all doing here. Now, Ketu is, again, a deep part of this person's nature is to be Uttara Ashadha. But Ketu is going to force you over time. The funny thing about Ketu is that we think we're it. We think we've mastered it. It's smoky. I often use this metaphor with Ketu, where it's this divine, it's this pizza. Now, it's almost like this false pizza, where we want to eat the pizza so badly. We have this dream. We've been dreaming about this pizza. So what we do is we shred a bunch of cardboard and put it on a plate. Then we cut off some pieces of paper, computer paper. We drop it on the cardboard, and that's our cheese. And then we slice little pieces of an eraser, and then we use that as our little bacon bits and our pepperoni. And we bring it all together and we chew on it. And we're like, yep, this is this thing I've been searching for. And we're chewing it, and we, in our minds, it's like, I am this thing. I need it so badly that this is what it is. Now, what happens is that over time, if we are walking, we walk past a pizza shop and we whistle through the graveyard because we smell the pizza. We're like, oh my God, that's what I truly am. I can't face that. I'd be so embarrassed to know that I've been eating this thing for so long. It's not even pizza, and it's who I am. I am the pizza. I am this pizza. but you're going to tell me my whole life I haven't been actually doing it? And we can't take it. So this is the narrative of Ketu. And this is what happens. Hi there, Anna. And hello there, Robbie. Nice to see you guys live here. This is the narrative of Ketu, is that we think we have it, but our unconscious compulsion causes us to not actually really have it. In the same way, Ketu, because the Ketu and Uttara Ashadha person, their identity is so wrapped up in the superiority that they go around pushing it on people when they're very young, and they expect that it's going to come naturally to them. And what happens is that they don't get it early in life. And because of that, Ketu dissociates them from this dimension of their nakshatra. So what Vic tells us is that of all the planets, Ketu, see, we read with Uttara Ashadha again that there's this narrative of a person who's an evolutionary agent who's trying to convey the will of the gods. But you are still a human, and you still have your human ego, and you still have to be accepted by friends and loved ones, and you have to compromise sometimes. Certain planets are going to be able to just do the leadership thing. Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Rahu specifically can do this masculine leadership energy, and there's not much trouble. But other planets, Uttara Ashadha becomes, they're not anybody's peer. And it becomes hard for them to be a team player. Ketu seems to be the most difficult planet, or graha, in the sign of Uttara Ashadha. It tends to indicate a fear of and withdrawal from challenges and leadership opportunities. It's almost like they have this intuition that they're this special leader, which makes it hard for them to have peers and to be a mutual peer. And they distrust their own capacity to lead and to conquer. So Ketu in Uttara Ashadha is burning themselves at both ends. They don't get to feel like a natural equal. And, Uttara Ashadha, they feel superior, and this puts them in positions when it's doing healthy. This puts them in positions of superiority, where they're not in touch with the common folk, but at least they get to be superior. And at least they get to transmit the will of divine, which is what their soul is here for. And at least they are themselves. You might have the whole world in resistance to you, but if you are being true to your divine nature, that doesn't matter. It's what you're supposed to do. This is when Uttara Ashadha is at its best. Is that it's a superior officer and commander. They have a hard time relating to normal humans, but at least they're being themselves. With Ketu here, you have a hard time relating as a peer, as an equal with others, and you have a hard time facing, because ever since you were a child, you've been trying to come into this superiority, and the world has resisted you, and you were so young that it gets pushed and obliterated out of you. So now you don't even trust this nature of yours to be a superior person. And life, you might hear this video, and you read into it, and it causes you to, now I want to try. Now I'm going to try to be superior. And the world is always going to push your head down. This is the nature of Ketu and Uttara Ashadha. But there are lessons there. You have to, sometimes as astrologers, we have to point out the fact that you're like Sisyphus, who rolls the boulder uphill, and then the Titans kick the boulder down and said, good, do it again. Good, you piece of shit, do it again. Keep going, you piece of shit. Sometimes, that's just me being a Scorpio, I guess. Sometimes the universe, you have to understand that Sisyphus was granted a golden opportunity to purify and glorify his spirit. And the universe is not calling him a piece of shit. The universe is saying, you're so lucky that you get to work out your karma. And that's what Uttara Ashadha, Ketu, is doing here too. Which is basically, there's never going to be a complete feeling of security when it comes to this balance between being a divine messenger and having a regular human ego. You're never going to feel like I'm fully done the superiority thing I'm supposed to do, and I don't feel fully happy as a mutual peer amongst my friends and loved ones. Now, at age 36 especially, your Rahu is going to start to come into the fore, and that means that you are going to have to begin to balance the nature of your Ketu in Uttara Ashadha with your Rahu. And Rahu, when Ketu is in Uttara Ashadha, Rahu can be in one of two places. It can be in Punarvasu, or it can be in Pushya. Now, by this time, hopefully, I've made videos describing the Rahu and Ketu in these signs. And you can read a little bit more into the Rahu in those positions by checking out those videos. Essentially, with Rahu and Punarvasu, Punarvasu is most welcome where fresh enthusiasm for new ideas is welcome. But it's unwelcome where long-term commitment and patient tenacity is needed. Punarvasu's whole sutra means the eternal rebecoming of Aditya needs to make the old and dry fresh and new. Vataha is dried out stale things, and then Ardram makes things moist, fresh, and new and vital. So with Rahu and Punarvasu, there is a constant need to learn to be in the returning cyclical freshness of life, which means the Ketu in Uttara Ashadha is going to get stuck on things. It's going to have these ideas, these goals, and it's going to identify with them, and things are going to fall out of your life. This is what Rahu and Punarvasu indicates, is that you're going to constantly be letting go of things, and this is going to eat away at your ego identity as a person who was supposed to conquer. I was supposed to do that goal. I was supposed to win that thing. I was supposed to do the Uttara Ashadha, the eternal, unfailing, undefeated conqueror. Now, Punarvasu, Rahu, is going to force you to be a little bit more wiggly, to be a little bit more, to have a little bit more juice, a little bit more fluidity and elasticity, and to grow, to identify your Uttara Ashadha conquering soul, not with any particular form, but it's going to grow to teach you that the real thing that you're looking to conquer is moksha, is your own soul, your own coming into your own identity in your own inner nature and truth. And which means that the forms of conquering are not as important as realizing the inner conqueror. And Punarvasu is going to do that by forcing you to let go of completing this mission. It's going to almost force you to have new intuitions that cause the long-range goals to lose their taste, to lose their venom, to lose their snap. And that it might even cause you to let go of a lot of things that you've tried to build, but you have to let go of them. That's what Ketu does, is it forces you to let go of things in order to be with the heartfelt energy of the present moment. Punarvasu is going to teach you to be in the flow, to let go of what no longer works, what no longer serves you. And throughout your 40s, Rahu in Punarvasu is really going to force you to be someone who is juicy, who is not so dry or stale. Ketu is really going to be a key dimension of your staleness. You have to let go of what you thought you were supposed to complete and conquer in order to get into the flow of what life in this present moment, the good feelings, the juice, the support around you, the opportunities that are in front of you. How do you move and flow with these so that your true, deepest objectives can emerge in your unconscious? You won't let go of everything. Hi there, Mo. Nice to see you. You won't let go of everything. There will be long-term goals that remain with you, with Ketu in Uttara Ashadha. But the Rahu and Punarvasu is going to cause you to flux and move with them and dance with them. Now, Rahu in Pushya The idea of, now let's talk about Rahu in Pushya with Ketu in Uttara Ashadha. With Rahu in Pushya, we read, the success of the master advisor needs tongues for the aspirant. Tongues can mean tongues of fire. It means tongues of spirit. It means tongues of intuition. The Holy Spirit, the flaming tongue of the Gnostic Gospels of Christianity. Pushya has the deity of Brihaspati as its lord. What this means really is that when you have Rahu in Pushya, it's likely that your Ketu ego, the ego of Ketu in Uttara Ashadha, has ideas of what it's supposed to be doing with its life, with its goals. And those ideas, because Ketu is in Uttara Ashadha, it means you're very far away from the Rahu point. You've been so sucked into the point of the nakshatras where Uttara Ashadha is, that your soul is very far away from integrating Rahu in Pushya, which means that the soul's Ketu energy has become stale and dry and bloated with what we would say is egoic ideas. Really, to roll with our pizza metaphor for Ketu, the dry, stale, the false pizza, which we called the unawakened version of Ketu. You're eating this cardboard pizza. It's got paper and it's little pepperonis made of eraser. You're chewing on that, and that's your egoic, unevolved idea of how to conquer life, of how to defeat your soul, of all these things that I've got to do, I've got to conquer, I've got to prove to everybody. Especially Ketu can be, I have this pressure that I'm going to fail all of my loved ones if I don't prove to everybody that I can be someone special, that I can do something special. And all of this has nothing to do with your true soul. Now, how do you find then what is truly inside of your soul? The best way to do it, when you have Rahu, when you have Rahu in Pushya, what you've been neglecting is to listen to wisdom. Whatever that wisdom means for you. If you are watching this video, I'm sure that you probably feel an open doorway to the ancient classical literature and Sanskrit sutras of Vedic lore. And so someone with Rahu in Pushya is probably inclined to explore jyotish, perhaps, Vedic, the lore of the Vedas, of the nakshatras, and the wisdom of Brihaspati, which is guru, which is basically the best thing for you to do with Rahu in Pushya is to be amenable to some kind of guru. It depends on good advice. And Pushya is really a gentle, feminine, nourishing nakshatra, symbolized by flowers, milk, and breasts. So masculine strict planets can indicate the malfunction of being at odds with teachers and guides. There's a hesitation to follow a guru path or a higher education due to feeling insufficiently educated, under-advised, and ill-informed. Especially you've got Ketu and Uttara Ashadha, which means you've been pushing, just use raw aggression in order to try and conquer your life without listening to the wisdom of higher-ups, being subordinate to a larger organization of knowledge. So be careful of Rahu in Pushya, can be skeptical of guides, which may have rational cause but needs to be realistically resolved. Feminine planets like Venus, Mercury, the Moon, and even especially Jupiter do well in Pushya. Rahu has a raw hunger to get the wisdom. I just want to get this wisdom so I can use it for my Uttara Ashadha ends. So when you turn 36, you might find that your Rahu is waking up and saying, I need to break out of my ideas of how I thought I was supposed to use Uttara Ashadha, of how I thought I was going to conquer my soul. and now I need to branch out and find ways of using Rahu in Pushya, of using my teachers. Hey teacher, I need you to, it's like going to a doctor and saying, hey doctor, I need you to stop my nose from bleeding. The doctor's like, why is your nose bleeding? You're like, I don't know, do you have any plugs? Just give me some, just let me shove some plugs up my nose just to stop this from happening. You got any like cotton? The doctor's like, dude, we gotta figure out why your nose is bleeding. Let me tell you, the student, what is wrong with you. Don't come to me and say I need this specific information. Let me tell you what you need to hear, or else don't waste my time. Get out of here. But this Rahu and Pushya has these problems. Goes to a teacher and says, hey, I need you to teach me this specific thing. And the teacher's like, I'm not going to limit myself and you by limiting my art. It's like a painter. Come to a painter. At some level, you'll be like, yeah, I want this thing. But ultimately, you want to let the painter, the tattoo artist, have their flow. And when it comes to the art of being a guru, you got to give them the rope to explore of how they want to teach you and what they want to teach you. So Rahu and Pushya has to be careful not to use the teacher, but to truly let go of their idea of what they thought their life's destiny was supposed to be. And this will involve a lot of feeling like I'm failing. I'm failing my family. I'm failing whatever I've built up to age 36. Because remember, Ketu has a hard time in Uttara Ashadha. So it has this whole ego of trying to conquer something, trying to conquer itself. It's not until age 36 that they just fucking completely let it go. Stop trying to conquer and be subordinate to the will of a guru. And this is what finding a balance here. You know, even Rahu and Pushya might find themselves getting bad gurus. People who are going to challenge you to be objective about your guru. Because in the end, you've still got Ketu and Uttara Ashadha. When you get to be in your 40s, you might find that a person, if the Rahu Lord is doing well, if you've got a good Saturn, if the Ketu Lord is doing well, if you've got good masculine energies, if you've got a good Jupiter, then this could be a person who could be a teacher's best student because you know how to question and challenge and conquer the superiority of your teacher in the long run, but while also being submissive and respectful while doing so. So that the teacher knows that you are a good student because you're not following the teacher, you're following the path that the teacher followed. You're surrendering to the teaching so that you can become an even greater teacher in the end, which allows you to be a greater conqueror. So, but if you're 36 and even going into your 40s, it's very likely that your best thing for you to do is to be humble and subjugate yourself to the will of the higher knowledge. Then when you get into your late 40s, Ketu will mature and come into, how do I now use the guru energy that I've absorbed to do the conquering that I want to do? That's the best way for us to convey Ketu in this sign. I spent a lot of time on it. I'm really fired up today. I've been resting a lot, so I can tell this is good. I feel really good about this, but I've spent a lot of time on it already. Let's take a look at Rahu in the sign. Let's now take a look. This is me doing this so I can later put the timestamps in my video. We are now going to look at Rahu in the sign of Uttara Ashadha. Now, we've just talked about Ketu in this nakshatra. Now, Rahu does well in the sign of Uttara Ashadha. We've learned that Uttara Ashadha, part of its egoic difficulty is that it has a hard time balancing the narrative of being an evolutionary agent of divine will while still carrying a human ego. If you're going to be a divine agent of divine will, channeling the evolutionary agency of the divine intelligence of the universe, you still got a wife and kids, and you got to say, hey, honey, how was work? You know, you got to come back down, and when you're having a conversation with your wife or your husband, you have to be able to compromise. And you can't say, you know, I am a divine will agent of the universe. Say, honey, I know, are we going to the movies on Thursday or Friday? It's better for me if we go Thursday. I know it's better for you, but let's compromise here. So having a regular human will, being an equal amongst your peers, being respected by your peers, but still pining for what you know in your soul is your capacity to apply yourself to superiority. This is important. Now with Rahu and Uttara Ashadha, what we read is that Uttara Ashadha is welcome when there's a subject to master, an opponent to conquer and subjugate, or a goal to attain. Whenever a leader is needed, Uttara Ashadha shines. So confident planets like Sun and Mars help Uttara Ashadha signify this leadership and the power to dominate and overcome. Saturn helps Uttara Ashadha endure long, arduous battles without giving up. Now, Rahu magnifies Uttara Ashadha's power and ambitiousness. And it's likely that throughout your whole life, even if you have Rahu and Uttara Ashadha, you've been wanting to be someone. You've been building this narrative of being someone who has some destiny to launch out and to be a conqueror, someone who's regarded as supreme amongst your fellow subjects and peers, who's really good at this one thing, and who wants to organize as a leader a group of people towards some thing. Now, as Rahu, you're going to take on that too heavily right away. You might go out and decide to be a pirate with a bunch of vagabonds and say, I want to be a pirate. And you go in this pirate ship and you bring all these people. And you have the energy of being a leader and everyone's like, wow, cool. But then you get 15 days out at sea. You're all out of resources. The mutinies start to happen. And all of a sudden you're like, okay. So people are plotting to kill me. People are plotting to tie me up, hog tie me, put me in the basement, feed me salt, and, revert. I've been Mr. Superior on this ship for 15 days while everything was going well. And I've been organizing and directing everybody. And sometimes being a director, you kind of come off as a dick. You got to tell people, stop doing this and swab the deck. Someone needs to swab the deck. The person's like, fine, you're the leader, so whatever. But now it's 15 days out at sea and the mutiny occurs. And all of a sudden you find out that you're in for more than you bargained for as a leader. And all of these pirates are now happily playing out their fantasy of playing captain to the person who was once captain, because you've been forced and hogtied into a chair in the basement. So this is like a very metaphorical of Rahu in Uttara Ashadha. Especially at age 36, you've got Ketu in Punarvasu or Pushya, and you've been applying yourself to those unconscious spaces. Now you're coming out with Rahu and Uttara Ashadha, because at age 36, our north node tends to bloom because Saturn matures, and we are now beginning to fully experiment with our Rahu position. So you're coming out and trying to be Mr. Superior Leader. You've been wanting to do it for so long, now you get an opportunity and a chance to, and you take on leadership in something, and you realize that there's a lot to it, and that it's difficult. But overall, Rahu magnifies Uttara Ashadha's power and ambitiousness. Vic Dicara regards this as a positive indication, a positive position. So you bravely going out and being in this pirate ship and experiencing all the craziness of all these pirates, as long as you don't get killed out there, all of that stuff, the pain, the ego, the sharing of dignity while still being superior and acting as a superior commanding officer, but still treating your subjects as subject to your intelligence, but also as humans who have their own role, who have their own lives, who have their own wife and husband and kids at home. All of this is grist for the mill of your soul's desire to be regarded as an intelligent commanding officer. And you need to go through all this crap, this ego dimension of things, in order to be a channel for the divine will. And overall, the universe is supporting you in this regard. But it's going to be especially so If Rahu is not shaming anything, if it's not tied into any important planets in a difficult way, if it's Lord, wherever your Rahu is at this time in the universe, it's likely going to fall into Capricorn, which means if you have a very difficult Saturn, if it's got ill aspects, if it's got ugly Shadbala, if it's closer to the first house cusp, if it's being hit by its enemies, Saturn is not only important for as the Rahu Lord, if you're born at this time and Rahu falls into Capricorn, or if your Rahu's falling into the beginning of Aquarius as well, depending on what time in the universe you are watching this video. If Rahu is falling in the sign of Capricorn, then Saturn is Capricorn's Lord, which means the narrative of developing the intelligence to pursue this leadership is going to depend on how well your Saturn's doing. If it's doing well, the cosmos is going to serve and give you easier opportunities. If Saturn's having a hard time, you're going to struggle with this even more. You're going to struggle to remain firm in following your Rahu in Uttara Ashadha destiny when you're in the basement and all of the cronies are torturing you in the basement of the pirate ship. It'll be hard for you to get through that, and it might cause a fear and anxiety whenever it comes to being a leader. But this is something you have to work through as someone with Rahu and Uttara Ashadha. Somewhere along the way, it's part of your destiny to lead and guide in this way. Now, if you have Ketu in the sign of Punarvasu, Punarvasu relates to the eternal rebecoming. It needs to make the old and dry, Vataha, fresh and new, Ardram. The eternal rebecoming is Punarvasu. So Vic does not give us any significations. Well, actually, what we read is that Ketu, let's see, Punarvasu is welcome where fresh enthusiasm for new ideas is welcome, but it's not welcome where long-term commitment and patient tenacity is needed. This makes things difficult because if you've got Ketu in Punarvasu, you're constantly wiggling, trying new things, being with the heartbeat of the moment. And your unconscious, you might find with Ketu in Punarvasu that you are always wiggling around and finding new identities, new long-term goals, new reasons to live. And all this newness you might find is an important part of who you are. But it can undermine the Rahu in Ashadha, which is trying to conquer long-range goals. So Punarvasu can keep you stuck in a repeating pattern of behavior that stops you from consciously committing to a long-range goal, which is what Rahu in Uttara Ashadha wants to do. Now the moon, the softer energies are bringing out the positivity of Punarvasu. Rahu and Ketu are more extreme than the moon and Mercury. They can bring a fresh renewal and interest into things, but they also indicate being easily bored and distracted and getting stuck in patterns. So Ketu in Punarvasu can get bored and stuck and never fully commit to what Uttara Ashadha needs to just grip, firmly commit, and smash itself and dedicate itself to a goal and go through all the difficulties involved with it to follow a goal through. Punarvasu will eventually, you'll learn, if you've got Ketu in Punarvasu, as the nodes mature, at age 48 especially is when Ketu matures, you're going to find that there's a reason that your soul has this wiggling, sidewinding energy. And it's a deep, true part of who you are. The Rahu in Uttara Ashadha is challenging you to apply yourself to long-range goals so that you can enjoy the wiggling of Punarvasu. Punarvasu is like a jazz musician who just likes to always, this is a new melody, a new melody, a new melody. And it's, always changing in all these different melodies. what is going to bring the greatest enjoyment of this ever-wiggling, uncatchable non-melody is doing a groove for a little bit. The jazz musicians will keep this groove, you know, da 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 da, and then now the Ketu in Punarvasu is going to put all these different new melodies into that groove, and then eventually the Ketu in Punarvasu person is going to say, change it now, and then the jazz musicians are going to change, but they'll have a groove, and they're going to stick to that groove. It's the groove of Rahu and Uttara Ashadha, a long-range goal that feels delicious when you swerve into Punarvasu's change. If Ketu and Punarvasu is always changing, it's not going to enjoy it. There's a flat line, and there's a line, and then there's a circle. The line and the circle, the 0 and the 1, engage each other. They are what make the variety that makes life have its spice and enjoyment. Ketu and Punarvasu needs that variety, and the variety is sticking to one thing, ironically. Punarvasu is already variety. It's multiplicitous infinite change. So variety for multiplicitous infinite change would be being stuck on a particular goal or pattern, a form that you dedicate to with edges, with a defined parameter. You play with that for a while, and then that's your variety. Then you go back to your original infinite variety nature, and it's like, it's good to be home. This is the narrative of Ketu and Punarvasu. I really like how I conveyed that. It's taking a long time, but it's okay. I'm fired up right now. Now for Ketu and Pushya, we have somebody who has Ratu and Uttara Ashadha. Ketu and Pushya has this narrative of somebody who is, for whom finding good advice, this is almost like someone who has, Ketu in the 9th house in a way. Brihaspati relates to Jupiter. So Pushya's whole thing is the success of Brihaspati, the master advisor, needs tongues for the aspirant. So to truly be subordinate to knowledge, you have to explore the tongues, the language, the true vibratory essence of all Sanskrit cosmic wisdom, which is Brihaspati, which is the Holy Spirit of the Gnostic Gospels, which is this sage energy. It's the vibration of ether. It's like we say with all the old ancient books, they're maktub, they're already written. It's the Arabic word, which means the vibrations of all knowledge already exist, and we're just blowing the dust off a book that's already been written. When you have Ketu in Pushya, you might find that you are somebody who has a clicking psychedelic intuition, who moves through a certain mastery of vibration with knowledge. And you have a sense of it, and you're probably good at dealing with it. But as Ketu always works, we mentioned Ketu is this pizza. It's this false pizza. So Ketu in Pushya is eating this false pizza, saying, yep, I'm a Sanskrit genius. I know language. I know the light codes. It comes to me intuitively. I don't even need to work on it. They're chewing on this pizza. And then a guru comes along, and that's like walking and smelling pizza. And you're like, oh no. If that's really pizza, then this crap I've been eating is going to devalidate what I've been my whole life. And it's going to be it's going to be an embarrassing ego shock to find that there is actually wisdom that a guru can move your egoic places of stuck patterns through. And it's a painful thing for Ketu and Pushya to deal with. Especially masculine strict planets tend to indicate the malfunction of being at odds with teachers and guides. So Ketu can have this malfunction of hesitating in following the true wisdom, due to feeling insufficiently educated, under-advised, and ill-informed. At some ways, it's probably up to the age of 36, you feel like you don't need to go to a university and get some kind of higher education, or follow a guru, or follow some higher path of knowledge. Then around age 36, you're going to realize that I'm stuck in a loop of my limited frame of receiving universal knowledge, of receiving knowledge, of educating myself, of expanding my path. Now, around age 36, Rahu is going to come online. If you have Rahu in Uttara Ashadha, it shows that you need to have some kind of goals, some kind of strict set goals of trying to complete something, using your knowledge that you've gained in a set way towards set specific objectives. Because you've probably been in this mystical, nihilistic, nebulous web of moving through all this knowledge and vibration that you don't actually use. That's what Ketu and Pushya is, that it moves through all this knowledge but doesn't know how to grip it and how to use it. Now, if you have Rahu and Uttara Ashadha, having a long-term goal and pushing yourself to complete a long-term goal, to have ambition, to have Uttara Ashadha's power and ambitiousness, to complete things, to be regarded as a leader, to be accepted by a large group of people as being the one who staked a claim and pushed to complete it. This is going to give you a set form, and it's gonna be embarrassing to get out of your Ketu. You had a all-encompassing receptivity to data and to knowledge, and now going into Rahu and Uttara Ashadha is going to force you to reckon with the fact that you haven't been doing anything with that knowledge, with that receptivity, with that guruship, with that apprenticeship, with all the knowledge you've gained. Now, Uttara Ashadha is going to force you to do something meaningful, materialistic with it, and ambitious with it, and to be a superior conqueror through it. And you're going to have to deal with the pirate ship energy of never having tried to be a leader or a conqueror, and using your knowledge practically in practical things that the world actually needs, to be a channel for the divine in specific situations. As you turn 48, you will realize that all of this stuff that you do through Uttara Ashadha, being a leader, being a pioneer, being an innovator, an initiator of some kind of group, some kind of movement that the world needs in specific situations, holding on to it, almost even feeling you're getting stuck on it. You might even feel like you lose the path of knowledge that you so desire. And that's what will happen around age 42, 43. You'll realize that you've gotten stuck on the form of Rahu and has neglected Brihaspati, which is the guruship, the true reception to knowledge. As you come into age 48, you'll realize that that's what Rahu was for. You'll use the forms that you've conquered, and that will guide you to an even deeper connection to Brihaspati, to Pushya, to the flowering, nurturing wisdom of a guru path, of an apprenticeship, of higher knowledge and education. And that's when Ketu matures and it means something. So that is probably the best way for me to convey that. So be aware with Ketu in Pushya of arrogance when it comes to knowledge, but eventually to use your goals to be a reason to refine your knowledge. This is a long one. It's okay. No regrets. I hope that you guys enjoyed We're not done yet with our larger video. But for those watching this part of this video, eventually I'm going to make this Rahu Ketu video for Uttara Ashadha as a separate video. So for those watching that, thanks so much. If you enjoy what I do, check out dustincormier.com/subscribe. Subscribe to my email list. I'm going to be putting out a new astrology book soon, and also all sorts of courses on my website. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this. Now, for those watching presently, who are still a part of my Nakshatra Sutra video, we are now going to delve into the next section, which is the life lesson, the supplication to Uttara Ashadha. And, well, actually, the supplication is going to come at the end. So this is returning to our discussion of Vic Dicara's book, Nakshatra, the Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology. Here we are now delving into Vic Dicara's depiction of the overall life lesson that can be expected from somebody who has any planets, any native with significant indications in the chart related to Uttara Ashadha. Really, this is the life lesson of this nakshatra, even beyond astrology. This is what this whole nakshatra teaches us as a particle of the circle of eternal wisdom. So, here's our life lesson. Vic Dicara tells us the most significant life lesson that we get from the Nakshatra Sutra of Uttara Ashadha. Again, it's Vishvesham Devanam Uttara Abhijayat Parastad Abhijitam Avastad. The inherent wisdom related to this nakshatra is this: as long as we conceive of ourselves as beings whose self-interest is fundamentally distinct and divorced from one another, i.e., the plural divinity is Devanam, we will wind up in some form of warfare, fighting to control the resources of the world. It's only when consciousness finds a singular unifying center that it can exist without warfare and struggle. The Vedas describe that singular unifying center as Param Atma, the ultimate self, which is all sentient life that we are all a part of. Now, this is what this is telling us, is that if we want to be a channel for the divine, our individual ego can't get in the way of the larger picture of collective unity. The Vedas describe that singular unifying center as Paramatma, the ultimate self. Now, a less lofty lesson is that if you want victory, Abhijita, you have to fight, Abhijaya. You cannot conquer anything without being strong and showing that strength openly and wielding that strength. And depending on whatever planets is going on, especially with Uttara Ashadha, is going to convey how you move through that. But again, I shouldn't even say that, because this is an overall lesson for everybody, regardless of your horoscope. If you are afraid to step forward and stake your claim, you will never conquer or win anything. What's beautiful about this is that the nakshatras, sometimes you find there's an acidy, tough truth, a hard truth about wisdom that is conveyed in the nakshatras. And this is an example of it. You know, these days with, the world is moving through wokeism, and, it's almost like in bad taste to be a conqueror. It's in bad taste to try to win, to be a leader, because it's not conducive to the democratic equality of everybody. But a Nakshatra Sutra like this is telling us that there are times when it is appropriate for a soul to stake its claim on an objective and fight to get over the limitations and weaknesses of itself, to be an exemplary leader in the group objective and to win and to show everyone else how it's done by falling forward, by flying forward with your faith in yourself to obtain an objective against all odds. The sutra also explains that the best way to win a fight is to increase your awareness, perception, and improve your perceptions, aiming to be aware of everything. It's Vishvesham Devanam, being a strategizer. Thus, it's not exactly muscle and might that wins the battles we truly need to fight. It is intelligence, awareness, and strategy. I wish I'd mentioned that in my Rahu Ketu depiction. Story of my life. Maybe I should start doing that. I'm going to keep that in mind, as I'll go through the life lesson first, then I'll do Rahu and Ketu after. But it's okay, because I think I still conveyed that well. The more we know about the world, the more easily we can conquer it. Ultimately, when we realize the unity in all things, we can effortlessly achieve victory, not by conquering others, but by harmonizing with everyone towards a singular goal that feeds the truth needed. Beautiful. Very psychedelic. Very eye-opening to me. I believe that I do have Saturn in Uttara Ashadha, and this has been humbling for me. It's nice to think that I could put myself out of my own egoic gain and in the context of doing something for everyone's greater good, how much that would change my life. Now, next up, we have what we call supplication. And this is actually a little poem that is given throughout various forms of literature, dripping from the wellspring of the primary Nakshatra Sutras in the Taittiriya Brahmana. The Taittiriya Brahmana actually contains some little poems and commentaries on each of the nakshatras. So this is the supplication and commentary given for what we've learned about Uttara Ashadha. It's not necessarily from the same author, though. The rishis that conveyed the Nakshatra Sutras, that was almost like probably a group effort, a very mystical thing that happened there. But these commentaries are people who are of the same consciousness, but not necessarily the very same people. But probably came out around the same time. Which again would have been 2,000, 3,000, really more like 4,000, 5,000 years ago. So that's like 2,000 BC, 3,000 BC. That's what I meant to say. So, our supplication is from Vic Dicara, his translation. Let everyone, Visvadeva, hear about the success of our efforts. This star gives swift prosperity and wealth. It gives rain's harvest. Now, there's a note here. And the note is this reference to Uttara Ashadha giving rain's harvest. This may be a seasonal reference coincident to the times of the author, which would have been about 5,000 years ago. The sun would be in this nakshatra during the harvest season. Rain is also a reference to Appa, waters, from Purva Ashadha, suggesting that Uttara Ashadha allows the efforts undertaken in Purva Ashadha to come to fruition, which I like a lot. Now, delicate and resplendent maidens perform deeds expertly and with vitality and bravery, nourishing everyone, Visvadeva, helping the endeavorer be victorious in achieving desires. Intellectuals succeed here. They become capable to lead us in every way in this world. They beautify and enhance those who are bold enough to step forward. Their knowledge gives us complete victory, abhijit, in this world and the other, in the soul. With it, we conquer our challenges. Through it, we understand and achieve our desires. It's very interesting that the delicate, resplendent maidens perform deeds expertly and with vitality and bravery that nourishes everyone, the Visvadevas, helping the endeavorer to be victorious in achieving desires. Really, that is a deep pin into the forces that are really moving through Uttara Ashadha. And it's this that brings all of the courage, the boldness, and the complete victory to conquer our challenges in this life and the next. Through this, we understand and achieve our desires. Amazing. Oh boy. Yeah, it's been a long one today. So thank you to all who have been hanging out and watching live. We have one more reading to go. That was Nakshatra, the Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology, by none other than Vic Dicara. Feel great about it. I think because I've got Saturn here, I was really just dialed in today. But I haven't done one of these in a while, so that's probably part of where that energy is coming from too. So, next up, we have our final reading for today. And this is coming from the divine forces of the Lunar Nakshatras, as portrayed in the Vedas, by Radhe. Here we are going to convey the Uttara Ashadha native. And this is somebody who in particular, let's fix my hair here. It's got this funky thing going on. Let's see, that usually fixes itself. Whatever. Rock and roll. So, this is an author who is steeped in the sidereal Vedic astrology tradition. So there are times when we're reading her work where we have to remember that her generalizations of a nakshatra can be a little bit licentious and relate, unfortunately, to certain things. Like, for example, she mentions that Uttara Ashadha's 2 stars, which I think is Omega and Theta, Sagittarii, are located in the arrow of the Sagittarius Archer, an arrow aimed at heights far beyond the heavenly stars. So no goal is too grandiose for Uttara Ashadha. But unfortunately, that arrow does not exist. The constellations do not exist as the constellations of the 12 sign Zodiac were incorrectly configured to the stars 2,000 years ago. And so we tropical Vedic astrologers do not appoint any importance to the arrow of the classical constellation of Sagittarii, because the true Sagittarius is a tropical phenomenon, not a sidereal phenomenon. That's why in 5,000 years, Uttara Ashadha is going to be nowhere near the tropical zodiac sign of Sagittarius. So keep that in mind. This author will sometimes say things like that, and I'm going to catch them and negate them when I can. But it's just something worth mentioning here. Overall, though, she ultimately takes her vision of a native from classical lore, as well as her clinical experience of and research, especially when the moon is in this sign, and as well from the Vedic lore of the associated deity. In this case, that's Vishvasham Devanam, the Visvadevas, which is itself its own entity in Vedic literature. So this is the native of Uttara Ashadha for anybody who has the moon here specifically. If the moon in your chart is in Uttara Ashadha, you should relate a lot to this. As well, the ascendant point, the lagna, is going to have the energy that we read here for the native. You can have a stellium there, a stellium of a whole bunch of planets, and you'll find this energy relates to you. And if your Atmakaraka falls into this nakshatra, then you will find this energy relates. But mostly, the highest one is the moon. The moon in Uttara Ashadha is the Uttara Ashadha native. Second being the rising sign. Those are the two most significant placements that carve the soul character and narrative of this asterism. So let's dig into it. This is the Uttara Ashadha native. Uttara Ashadha is a victory-inspired nakshatra. According to Bhatta, who's a commentator on the Taittiriya Brahmana, the foundation of Uttara Ashadha above is the all-conquering force of triumph. Its foundation below is that which must be conquered. So this nakshatra, the native of this nakshatra, seeks to be in contact with the all-conquering force of triumph and truth, which I often say, I've been saying in my video where I went through the Nakshatra Sutra of this sign, that the Uttara Ashadha native is like an evolutionary agent. They are the transmitter of the intelligent truth of the divine forces that live inside of the Devanam, the deific vibratory intelligence of the cosmos. So I always say Sanskrit, when it comes to the Vedas, the vibratory, each consonant and vowel in Sanskrit has a vibratory slot and is like it's a chemistry. Each word and consonant moves together with other words in a similar way. It's like the periodic table of elements. Oxygen is always going to behave the same way. Helium is always going to behave the same way. Hydrogen is always the same. It has to do with the proton and the electrons revolving around it. So the chemistry is the same on any planet. You can travel 10 billion light years away, find another planet. Oxygen and boron, they're all going to operate the same way. Sanskrit is the same way. It's periodic. It's always going to vibratorily work the same way. So it's almost like it's muktub. It's already written. It's a book that we're just blowing the dust off of. And the intelligence of the cosmos is a vibratory reality, which the ancient rishis, seers, they saw the words that existed before we found them. And these words of the Visvadevas have an intelligence, an agenda, a narrative that they are seeking certain people to be transistors for. And Uttara Ashadha natives are these evolutionary agents who carry the will of divine intelligence. But with this, they have to balance the human ego, because they are still a human. They still have to go to their wife and say, honey, what do you want for dinner today? Not just me, because I'm an evolutionary agent, but also working with your bosses and subordinates and your peers, recognizing that you have a destiny to be someone who's a leader, who expresses this supremeness is important, but it's also important to be subordinate when you have to be. So the foundation above is the all-conquering force of triumph. And what is built from that, the foundation below, is that which must be conquered. So when this native works best is when they know that they're superior at something, they have some divine mission, and they know that they're good at it, and they find an opportunity to express that superiority in the world. And the Shakti of Uttara Ashadha is the ability to remain unvanquished. That's apradrishya. When these three things come together, behold, there is victory. Now, all of that comes from the Taittiriya Brahmana with the commentary of Pattabhaskara Mishra, somebody who did a commentary on the Nakshatra Sutras. So, what we read from Radhe is that Uttara Ashadha arouses noble aspirations in its native. I got a half sneeze coming and that sucks. Having ultimately the goal of spiritual liberation, Uttara Ashadha produces a divine warrior of sorts, an evolutionary agent, as I like to say. In fact, any righteous initiative that has the possibility of changing the world, defending justice, or protecting the underdog will do just fine for this person, so long as it represents the concepts big, victory, and teamwork. We've noted that Ernst Wilhelm puts a strong emphasis on the three kingdoms. There's the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom. So the mineral kingdom is Dhatu, the plant kingdom is Mula, the animal kingdom is Jeeva. This is a Jeeva Nakshatra, which means it's not so much focused on the ground things. It's not even focused on its locale. It's focused on large global trend-setting trends and fluctuations in the larger sphere of humanity. They tend to be well aware of what's happening online and on the internet and with larger movements. And so the Jeeva Nakshatras tend to have this big energy, especially Uttara Ashadha. Now, the teamwork factor is very important for them because they need to be able to work on a team. Even though they have this intuition of this is where the world is going. Japan is doing this thing, and the Russians have got this brilliant thing. They need to bring it all together and ask, what can my company and my country do with the resources that we have, while integrating and innovating from all around to make ours the best. The symbol for Uttara Ashadha is the tusk of an elephant. The tusk of an elephant is actually the symbol for both Ashadhas, according to the Surya Siddhanta. So, no doubt, this is the dominant tusk, by which an elephant removes obstacles, marks and carves its signature into its territory, and victimizes intruding animals. When severed, the tusk regenerates. This symbolizes the invincible nature of the elephant and likewise the Uttara Ashadha native. Ventures that involve competition, a grand cause, and seemingly unbeatable odds are preferred by this native. Take, for example, George Patton, who had the moon in Uttara Ashadha. A general who possessed a tough and invincible attitude. George Patton is acclaimed as the most successful United States field commander of any war. His troops were trained to the highest standard of excellence. Among many things, Patton is remembered for his fierce determination and his stellar ability to lead soldiers. Now, Uttara Ashadha's 2 stars. Oh, yeah, so, right. So this is a sidereal statement, which says Uttara Ashadha's 2 stars are at the tip of the archer's bow, which means nothing is too small, no victory, no odds against victory are too minuscule to incite this person into action. It's just basically going to say that this person handles lofty goals. And what is relevant here is that indeed the native is likely to confront many opposing forces in life, just as the Visvadevas are constantly confronted and pursued by asuras, which are the egoic things. Basically, Uttara Ashadha native is doing what's right because it's what's right. It's like you're hanging out with a bunch of guys and a bunch of girls, and somebody says, like you're out in the backyard, and the Uttara Ashadha guy's like, you know what, we should have a fire. I think that'd be great for everybody, right? Does everybody agree we should have a fire? And then someone, the Asura, comes out, is like, well, what makes you the big man who wants to have the fire, huh? I wanted to have a fire too. Like, what makes you the instigator of it? Let's do it together, for God's sakes. The Uttara Ashadha person's like, yeah, okay, so we're going to have the fire then, yeah? Right? Good. Let's do the objective. Let's not worry about the I want to do it, you want to do it ego crap. Let's have the fire, shall we? And then Uttara Ashadha is just like, let's have a fire. All right, so we need some sticks. We need sticks here, like, how about you go get the sticks, and then I'm going to go inside and get a lighter as well as some paper. And his buddy's like, well, what do you mean? Like, why don't I go get the lighter and the paper? And the Uttara Ashadha is like, sure. Right. Somebody's got to get the sticks, so I'll go get the sticks. Oh, wait, hold on. So you're the big man who gets the big logs? No. I'm going to get the big logs there, tough guy. Relax. And then the Asura goes and gets the logs. And then the Uttara Ashadha is like, okay, whatever. Right. And then he goes and gets what this egotism of the human personality, feeling like they're being delegated. Uttara Ashadha doesn't even give a darn about these things. But they have to deal with them, especially if there's karma, if there's other planets, if there's a lot of if there's a stellium, if there's things going on with the Lord of Uttara Ashadha. If you've got the moon in Uttara Ashadha, and you've got like Mars in Cancer, or if you've got Mars conjunct Saturn, while Mars is in the same sign as Saturn, while the moon is in Uttara Ashadha, or some other malefic. Something is going on with the moon or the rising sign point or whatever is in Uttara Ashadha. There's some difficulty going on. You're going to naturally do the narrative of being the leader, but the Asuras are going to constantly confront you. That's kind of what is conveyed here. Now, political and social activist Jane Fonda.
Justin?
Yeah.
Where are you at?
I'm in the basement.
Oh, I have lunch here for you.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Dad. That's fucking sick. I'll be up in a sec. Dad brought me some lunch. Yes. Thanks, Pops. Okay. Political and social activist Jane Fonda has her rising sign and her Jupiter in Uttara Ashadha, and she displays several prototypical attributes of Uttara Ashadha. In her public opposition to U.S. involvement in Vietnam, Fonda joined forces with thousands of like-minded individuals. This is again the Jeeva energy, is sensitive to global movements and to be the face of them and to use them to their advantage for their personal goals and objectives. Fonda also became involved in several radical movements in the United States, including the American Indian movement and Black Power. She's a strong supporter of Huey Newton and the Black Panthers. Commenting on her radical bent, Fonda is quoted, "Revolution is an act of love. We are the children of revolution, born to be rebels. It runs in our blood." Now, outside of Indra-ruled Jyesta and Indra-Agni-ruled Vishaka nakshatras, Uttara Ashadha is the most ambitious of the 27 nakshatras. Everything about Uttara Ashadha is larger than life. So it's only second to Vishaka and Jesta in this grandioseness. The Visvadevas fight only the big battles of the universe on behalf of really big causes. And the biggest, most grandiose of all yajnas, the Soma Yajna sacrifice, is performed exclusively on behalf of the Visvadevas, which is a huge statement. If you've been listening to my Nakshatra Sutra series, you'll learn that the Soma Yajna is the brick and stone mortar that is, in the days before there were sutras that you could write down, they wanted to have ceremonies and rituals that contained the essence of the wisdom of the Vedas. And the Soma Yajna is a ceremony where there's 27 stones and there's oblations to all the Vedic deities. It's like the foundation. It's the bedrock that Vedic literature stands on. And so to say that the Soma Yajna is performed on the behalf of the Visvadevas really says a lot about the Visvadevas and this lunar asterism. And the agenda, the evolutionary agency that this native is an agent for when they are in a state of true cosmic fusion with the greater will of divine intelligence. So, unlike Jesta and Vishaka, Uttara Ashadha has the power of numbers behind it. Jesta and Vishaka tend to be lone soul agents, but Uttara Ashadha is more like Jane Fonda, who is the face, the centrifugal figure of a larger movement with numbers behind them. And that signifies also the Visvadevas, the 33 gods of the divine forces. So what Uttara Ashadha provides this native is the ability to excel in a team environment. Now, with teamwork, the Visvadevas successfully conquer the Asuras. Now, if it's not afflicted, Uttara Ashadha promotes the subordination of personal prominence to the overall larger eminence of the group. Again, it's like, I don't care who gets the wood, who gets the kindling, as long as the group gets to have this fire and the group is continued and furthered. This is Uttara Ashadha's ultimate goal. And this native is advantaged in professions that require a collaborative effort and a common goal. Of course, they have to be aware of being too headstrong, and they have to be aware of the delicate operations that teamwork requires. Now, one of the keys to success for this native is their ability to strategically align with higher echelons of society. The Uttara Ashadha native establishes important connections by moving within privileged circles. Such connections are pivotal for realizing this native's personal and professional goals. And anyone with any significant indications in the chart related to Uttara Ashadha is going to want to do this, to move through these circles and to have these connections. This is in strong contrast to Jesta, the assertive nakshatra ruled by headstrong and fiercely independent Indra, rarely found to be sharing glory. Indra, the Jesta native, keeps victory credits to themselves. Now, this shows that if a part of the narrative of Uttara Ashadha is learning not to be like Indra, to share the spoils and to enjoy the teamwork. In the end, this teamwork will be a positive part of this person. Now, if duly afflicted, or if in a chart with multiple factors of a competitive nature, the Uttara Ashadha native is capable of a similar mentality, of being too competitive, of being a bad sport. The native may even believe that everyone in the world is against him. Seeing that every demon in the universe went up against the Visvadevas, such belief may not be entirely delusional. Because every demon in the universe did go up against the Visvadevas in Vedic lore, which is the deity. The Visvadevas together is the deity signified by this asterism. But ultimately, that is just in keeping with the narrative of the individual soul battling the asuras within itself. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this big war, but that's a spiritual metaphor for defeating the suras inside oneself, finding harmony with the egotism of the individuated human material ego, and being a channel for the higher light of the Devanam. It happens inside ourselves and multiplies itself into manifestation through physical reality. This is true for all of us, but we might find it's especially true for Uttara Ashadha. There's a lot there, and I hope that this has given you all something to digest, something to consider with regard to the nature of this native. You know, this person might do well, again, as someone who is a team working person, and they're advantaged in professions that require a collaborative effort and common goal. Something to keep in mind for the careers of those who are natives of this nakshatra. So I'm going to put out a video that is going to talk a little bit about the Vedic lore surrounding the Visvadevas, so keep an eye out for that. Ultimately, I feel pretty good. This is a long video today, but I was happy to do it. I was really tuned in today. So I hope you guys thought so. I'm Dustin Cormier, and this is How to Rock Astrology. If you've enjoyed my work here today, be sure to check out dustincormier.com/subscribe, where you can subscribe to my email list, and you can check out anything that I've got going on related to tropical Vedic astrology, as well as I'm going to be writing a book about tropical Vedic astrology. I've got novels coming out, and eventually I'm going to do courses as well. So if you're somebody who wants to be involved with everything I've got going on, feel free to check me out there and to subscribe to my email list. As well, just watch my channels because I always got more stuff coming through. I'm Dustin Cormier. This has been How to Rock Astrology. Thanks so much for watching, folks. See you guys on the other side.